Welcome everyone to the Thrive Wearables track today at the Giant Health Show. Really delighted to be back at the show again for the third year running, in fact. And although it's a little bit different this year, Thrive are bringing excellent speakers again and looking to run some of these workshop sessions or roundtable sessions where we explore some really exciting themes in the world of wearable tech. And I'm especially excited today to be talking about hearable tech, because this is a big topic and something that I think in 2021 is going to be big news. And I think we have a pretty impressive panel today in terms of those working really directly in that focus space of ear-based technology. So I'm really delighted to introduce the panel. Just before I do that, if you want to get in touch with anyone on the panel, you can find their details at thrivewearables.com/giant2020, or you'll be able to also find them on the Giant website. So please do get in touch with the speakers if you want to ask them questions about what you're seeing today and what you're hearing from them about what they're up to. There will be plenty of time at the end of the session for audience questions. So we're really excited to be taking those questions through the day and listening to some of the answers later on. So please put those questions to the panel and they'll be addressed as efficiently as we can at the end of the session today. So without further ado, I'm going to, in no particular order, go around and just ask the speakers to introduce themselves today. And I'm going to start with you, Tim. Tim Antos from Kokoon.
Hi everyone, I'm Tim Antos, CEO and co-founder of Kokoon. So at Kokoon, we help people sleep and relax easier using audio. So in essence, we take some of the coaching that you typically get in a sleep clinic and make it more accessible to anyone. So we monitor various biometrics and we collect various data. And that enables us to deliver personalized coaching, so CBTI-based coaching to help people improve their sleep and get more from their downtime. So we've got two products, our Nightbuds product, which is a tiny in-ear product, and then our Relax product, which is a larger over-ear product. You can actually check out our Nightbuds product now. We've just launched that new product. Just search nightbuds.co and you'll be able to find some exciting information on that product.
Fantastic, thanks Tim. And Pauline O'Callaghan from Hearable Labs, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Polly, I'm founder of Hearable Labs, and we develop innovative technologies for hearables. We also provide engineering services to companies developing hearables, be it startups or established companies that are branching into that segment. And my background is electronic engineering, and I started the company about 2 years ago. Previous to that, I'd been developing a hearable device, and I realized, as probably everybody here has, that there are a lot of engineering challenges to overcome with hearables, from making the hardware really, really small to fit in your ear, making it work in real time on a very small battery, and just having that really nice user experience, great audio that people expect from their headphones. So I started Hearable Labs with the idea that we would solve some of these engineering challenges for companies so that more hearables can get to market, because I really believe there's a huge potential impact that they could have on people's health and people's lives. So, and I think the other panelists here are really the leaders in that field today. So I'm really excited to be part of this.
Fantastic, thanks, Polly. Johannes Kreuzer from Cosinuss, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Johannes Kreuzer. I'm the founder and the CEO from Cosinuss, and we develop products in the ear with measuring medical grade vital parameters, SpO2 level, oxygen saturation, temperature, heart rate, respiration rate. At the moment, we have a very big study with COVID patients who are monitored at home with our devices. So it's a remote patient monitoring system. We also transfer the data coming from the ear to the clinic, and then they can take care about it. We're now a medical company, medical certificated company, and this is the main focus on it's the sensors and how to get the best signals out of the sensors.
Fantastic, and I can certainly endorse your technology as well. We've had it in the lab and looked at that in detail. So really great to have you on the panel. Alan Davis from Nuheara, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Thanks, Jacob. Yeah, my name's Alan Davis from Nuheara. I'm the Chief Product Officer, so I'm responsible for all the product development activities in the company. Nuheara is a hearing hearables company, so we really focus on the hearing aspect of hearables and trying to provide a lot of hearing function in devices. We're not really targeting trying to be a hearing aid, so we're not really a hearing aid, but we are kind of your first hearing device. So that throws up a lot of really interesting challenges around trying to provide hearing enhancement. How do you personalize for your ears and that sort of thing? We have about 3 products that we've developed, and our latest one, our Max product, just was listed as one of the top 100 inventions of 2020 by Time. So we're really excited by that. But yeah, we think the hearing space is still huge and has a lot of innovation to go.
Yeah, congratulations on that, Alan. Fantastic achievement for your company and for the Hearables, sort of qualifying it as a thing, I suppose, and the public are going to catch up eventually. So we've just got to keep plugging. I'm going to start with you, Tim, because we've known each other quite a while, and I remember talking to you way back when you were talking about EEG and sleep. So that's a brainwave measurement for those who don't understand what EEG is. Yeah, I guess I always had this sort of frustration with EEG. Somebody who has worked on the sensors before and found very few applications for those signals. The brain is very complex. EEG is pretty simple. Tell us how you've kind of leveraged that signal for what you do, because it's to me a real killer combination in terms of the sleep and the brainwave side of things.
Yeah, so but basically our kind of key goal is to get as much insight as accurate insight as we can about how that individual's relaxing, falling to sleep, and then how they're sleeping, and that really kind of helps us kind of understand that individual. So EEG is obviously a really good technology for measuring sleep. We've actually kind of expanded our measurements. So we use a number of different parameters that we then combine to get a total kind of a holistic view of various sources of data to give a more robust data. Because one of the things in the consumer space is that it's very uncontrolled and people will wear things in different ways. And we just need to ensure that we have robust data. And EEG is one of these technologies that can be very good, and it can also have poor signal. So what we do is we combine a number of biomarkers to really get the best spread of data. So our current Nightbuds product is looking at heart rate variability as well, and combining that to really build a picture of that individual, how they're sleeping and what's going on. And I really think that the move into the natural habitat of the individual is one of the key things, because it's very, I don't know if you've ever done a sleep study, but it's incredibly intrusive when you've got kind of stuff glued to your head, wires hanging everywhere. It's just incredibly unnatural. And we may not be at the, we come close to, but we're not at that clinical level of accuracy. But what we are able to do is collect a lot more data over a much wider time period in a more natural setting. And we actually find that incredibly powerful in helping us kind of optimize and improve that individual's challenges.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm going to come back and ask you about data a bit later on, I think. Johannes, you have a lot of sensors involved in what you do. You're looking at signals and measuring them in a very rigorous and scientific way, almost not to be unfair, Tim, but at the other end of the spectrum, where the user experience side of things and the kind of productization side of things have not had to take hold, and that obviously introduces compromises. And as you said, you're not at that sort of bleeding edge scientific level. And how do you find sensors are moving on, Johannes, in terms of what you can measure in the ear, the sort of qualification against gold standards? Where is the ear at when it comes to measurements?
Yeah, so I would say the ear is one of the best places to measure. Of course, you can't measure there everything. ECG, for example, is it's not really a good place, but everything else, starting with core temperature, if you want to monitor body core temperature, the ear is one of the best places or convenient places. Of course, there are some internal probes and something like that, but SpO2, every optical measurement, it's the best place inside the ear. It's dark inside. You don't have muscles. You don't have a lot of movements, and even you don't move your head a lot. For example, all the wrist watches, you write on the keyboard, you write, you're doing movements, and you move your head very slow and not so much. So this is why it's a very good starting point for all the measurements, and this is why we get there also much higher quality out of this data. And even in at a place where it's not the user or the wearer is not so disturbed, because we are used to have something in the ear, we are used to have something at the ear, whatever. It's not a patch where you have to stick it somewhere and something like that. So this is why it's a very good place on the one side. It's a one place where you get a lot of data and where you also then can extract out of this data a lot of more parameters. So that's why I'm sure that it's one of the best places there to measure.
It's interesting though. So I guess, Pauline, maybe I'll ask you this question. Why hasn't the Hearable taken over in a deeper way so far? Is it to do with engineering challenges? Is it to do with sensors not being small enough? Why hasn't the ear become kind of bigger, quicker?
Yeah, I think there's been a really big barrier there in terms of startups getting into the Hearables game. There's been some really interesting Kickstarters over the years and other crowdfunding campaigns for Hearables, but most of the time you don't see them actually even getting to make their product because they've underestimated how much the engineering challenges are. So that means that aside from a small number of new companies who can actually get Hearables to market, you're relying on the older and bigger and more established companies, which are always slower to move. But I think, yeah, I agree with you that over the next year or so, it's going to get really interesting because I think more and more those engineering challenges are getting smaller. And I think the more we can get even the playing field and lower those barriers to entry, the more interesting Hearables we'll see come from all directions, not just from the established players. And I think we'll see Hearables take hold more than.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible feat of engineering to do anything in that form factor, just because I'm a bit of a dinosaur when it comes to engineering. And, I've just seen these things shrink and shrink. It's absolutely astonishing. I mean, I guess there are other reasons things are opening up. Of course, Apple's products have paved the way to a great extent, although they're not exactly cutting edge relative to what's going on in the space. But there's other things like regulations as well. I guess, Alan, you've benefited from things in the US changing. Is that fair to say in terms of opening up the hearing aid market, for example?
Yeah, I mean there is regulatory change happening in the US. It's kind of been announced, but it hasn't been enacted yet. So they have new OTC regulations, so people can purchase hearing aids over the counter. There are ways people sell hearing aids over the counter already over there, but we think that regulation is going to create a new market for people looking for entry-level hearing devices. So when that comes along, so it hasn't actually been put in place yet, but we think you're going to see hearing devices in retail shelves and much more accessible and much better user experience as well, so people can buy these and set them up themselves rather than the traditional audiological approach. Just circling back to the sensor topic, Jacob, I think also that the wrist is a little bit different as well, and it's perhaps a factor of how long you wear the product, because sometimes on the, you can wear your watch all day, but hearables are very situational at the moment. They don't have the battery life yet to be worn all day. They only have 5, 6, maybe 7 hours for some products, and people kind of take them on and off. So I think that's also just to jump onto that last question, because I had some thoughts while you were talking about it. But I think that's also a factor that driving the adoption of some of those technologies. And as the battery life gets better, we're going to see those things happen, I think.
It's tantalizing, isn't it? Kind of every facet of wearable tech seems to need kind of just about double the battery. And so from a physics point of view, that's not sort of monumental. But it does really feel like that battery equation, is there throughout all of the discussions I have with wearable, virtually all of them, unless the form factor is particularly conducive. So, I can imagine with a hearable technology, you've got, really serious demands on that battery. But I guess we are seeing quite a bit coming from industry in terms of low power silicon, for example, which 5-6 years ago was just not a thing relative to where it's at now. So there is convergence, I suppose, between those two things. So going back to your point about situational and kind of people wearing sporadically and therefore maybe interrupting data sets, I would say for a start, probably the data sets you get even in that case are considerably better than you would traditionally with people, doing spot measurements of their health parameters, for example. But anyway, they're not wearing those things all the time. You do see a lot of people wearing Apple products all the time, the Apple earbuds all the time. Is it going to be a thing in the future where people are just constantly augmented when it comes to their hearing? Because it's fairly low friction, isn't it, to have those things in? And as long as you're getting the right social interactions and you've broken that barrier, wearing of glasses is a thing that people do for 8-10 hours a day. Will it get to that stage?
I think we're going to see that. If you look at hearing aids, the big difference between a hearable product like ours and a hearing aid is actually how you wear it and how long you wear it for. A hearing aid has been designed to be worn all day, and the technology and the power usage in those is really incredible. They have really leading low power electronics in those devices, and they've managed to make them run all day. And nowadays they're rechargeable, and they do have Bluetooth and wireless connectivity in them. So I think we're going to see those two things converge, and maybe those devices have been really focused on hearing, but later we're going to see some really interesting products from hearables companies that are going to bring convergence there and provide different options.
And your point, Jacob, about the data sets are going to be better than just spot measurements. I think that's an important one as well, because definitely at the moment and maybe even in the future, hearables won't be something that you'll have on 24/7 or even maybe 12 hours a day. But if you take, for example, fertility tracking, like I know women who wake up every morning and take their temperature and write it in an app, and aside from the user experience of that, they're just getting one data point a day and they use it to manage this big aspect of their health. So if you like what Johannes is working on with the measuring core body temperature inside the ear, if you're, for example, sleeping with something like that that's a game changer for women.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I was going to go on to this data thing because I had a question for Tim, really. I think probably you've got one of the longest data sets of all the panelists today, potentially. I'm speculating, but you've been taking data from sleep conditions for a long time. What stuff's coming along on the back of that knowledge and insight from that data?
Yeah, so our big thing is really helping people with life challenges that they have. So I'm struggling with too much stress, or I'm struggling to improve my sleep, or I have issues with sleep, and what we're really able to do is take quite it does have data, but sleep science is quite established and solid, and we're able to take this quite established and solid science and apply big data to it. So really optimize the details, the nuances in how to help someone with their challenge, because we have a much bigger data set, and we can see, right, trying this little thing or doing this exercise is more effective than this exercise. So we're much, we're able to apply big data to the challenge of helping someone with those challenges, and that's just something that's not been able to do before. To get data sets on the level that you need to wire up thousands of people for multiple days to get kind of comparable data sets, and this is why kind of what we're doing, we really hope to push the science forward, as well as taking what's already there to customers. We also want to help push it forward, and this is why our kind of sleep scientists are so excited, because they've never had so much data to use to help with these challenges. And just rewinding back a little bit, with Kokoon, we are really pushing for as close to the kind of clinical standards of accuracy as possible. But it's just about kind of realism with ourselves. We know we're not going to get to that lab level, but we can get very close to that lab level, and we're regularly comparing against kind of clinical gold standards and continuing to push that thing. And I think that's where some of the most exciting advances have been in sensor advances of late, is how much closer we've been able to get to that gold standard way of measuring over the last kind of 4 or 5 years that we've been really focusing on that. So it's really exciting just to see how accurate our latest devices are.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, I'd love to talk more, maybe offline about that, the data set and where you're going with it. Johannes, broadening this out a bit, what are the other application areas in the ear? I see that you're working in the epilepsy space. Are there some obvious sort of low-hanging fruit applications that really should be happening in the ear, as it were?
That's a good question. So there are a lot of things which are, let's say, the combination of several sensors, or even that you say you use the temperature for detecting fever, or like Pauline for tracking fertility, something like that. And what we see, it's always the combination of several requirements or something like that, but they lead more or less to the same devices or the same products, which is quite good, because we have the big advantage. We have 4 of the 5 vital parameters, and on the 5th we are working on it, and they are the standard parameters. When you go to your doctor, when you go to a clinic, if you have an accident, they will take the vital parameters. That's the first thing that they will do. And then they use it because you had an accident, or they use the temperature for fertility tracking, or they use something like that. But this is the big advantage. And I also, I agree with Tim. So sometimes you don't need this lab accuracy or something like that. So this very unusual setting or something like that. But you get the real life, and you get the data real life and long time and something like that. And for example, as what we have now with the COVID patients, they are at home, they are having more or less their real life. Of course, they are ill, but and the doctors were not used to it. They were used to it that the patient is sitting, he's not moving, he's not talking, he's nothing doing, and then they get a measurement, so the accuracy of the SpO2 level or something like that, it's quite good. And if the patient was moving, he said, please don't move. And now this patient is walking around, they only see the data, they don't know what happened, they don't know why something happened or something like that. And this is what now changed, so that and this is also with epilepsy and something like that, you will never get in this real life the highest accuracy. This is not possible because people are moving and something like that. But you need the context information, and then it's possible to have a much better overview about the patient, about the treatment, or about the illness and something like that. And this is, I think, what changed. And then you will have a lot of more application where you can use hearables, where you can use sensors in the ear, if it's for epilepsy or if it's for sepsis detection, something like that. And then you have all the firefighters, the army, and all the workers who are in a dangerous environment. And there are a lot of applications which are then able on this technology.
That's really interesting. I think, yeah, I love the idea that you've got those critical measures all there to play with this sort of application area that spans out from there. And it just sort of highlights just how little progress has been made so far and what the opportunity is, I guess. So I'm really, as I said at the beginning, really excited to see where it goes. I want to talk about the bigger picture, I suppose. So we've got wearables, we've got hearable technologies in the ear. How can we start to kind of imagine a network of things? So augmenting those technologies with other things. We talk to some of our clients when we're talking about kind of care in the home applications, about having other parts of a wearable ecosystem. So you kind of imagine an out-of-box experience, which is plug something into the mains, put something on your body, and for that to be automatically connected and working. So in particular cases where people have neurodegenerative diseases, for example, it may be really beneficial to just have a really super simple out-of-box experience and everything's working, all configured completely, no Wi-Fi passwords, all that sort of stuff. Are there other ways broader than that hearables can kind of start melting into the landscape of technology in a sort of quite organic way? And what are the sort of technologies that might enable that? It's a bit of a broad question, but has anyone got any thoughts on that kind of subject?
I think one of the advantages of having something in your ear is the data that you can get from your other wearables. So if I'm wearing a patch, like to detect my sugar levels or something like that, okay, I might have an LED or something, but I can't really get data from that in real time and understand what it means without looking at a screen. And this is one of the things anyway that I hope Hearables will achieve, is to kind of unglue us from our screens a little bit, where we can be more heads up, actually present in our environment with just a layer of extra information via audio. But I think, so for example, if I'm wearing this sugar level sensor and my sugar level spikes because of something I ate an hour ago, and okay, I could look at the app sporadically or maybe get a push notification, but it would be really nice to have something natural in the background where, maybe from the field of auditory display, I'm hearing a certain level of background kind of beep or something like this that tells me when my sugar level has spiked, so that at the same time I can kind of assess how my body feels. Like, am I tired, or am I full of energy, and does that have something to do with my sugar levels, where it's not this I need to look at a screen and process the information and think about what that means, but it's this more natural in the background. I almost like feeling something happened in your body. You just hear that your sugar level spiked. And so I think that's where Hearables can kind of join and become a network with other wearables and provide advantages in that way.
It's challenging, isn't it? The sort of notion of interruption, and when you're in a social setting and you're engaging in that context, it seems like a long way away where a wearable or a hearable can actually kind of be sensitive to that and to be interrupting that conversation to tell you about that other thing. And I think that's probably one of the challenges with things like smart glasses and how much of a flop kind of Google Glass was for multiple reasons. But that kind of interruption and that sort of sense of like, are you with me or are you with your technology? So I think the challenge, the UX challenge, and the sort of, I mean, Alan, you must have kind of a whole load of thinking around this stuff because you're kind of designing a system that inherently is continually partially interrupting to some degree. It's kind of augmenting and flavoring and tempering your hearing. Do you, I mean, turning to that actually, and sort of going back to the augmentation thing that I was talking about, I know you've got other things that are non-hearable as well that are in your ecosystem. How do you kind of manage all of that stuff from that perspective, and then from the user experience side of things and the sort of sensitivity to social stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. We, the killer app for the ear is hearing stuff, right? So it sounds obvious, but sometimes it's easy to forget. And we do build out some kind of, we call them accessories, but they're really ways to interact with your environment in different ways. So one of the things we provide is something that allows you to connect your hearable straight to your TV and hear the sound coming straight out of your TV. And it's not, it's a bit different to other things out there in that there's no pairing required. So it has a really different user experience. You access it through an app and you just tap on it, and then all of a sudden you can hear your TV clearly. And that's kind of a way to put your hearing, focused onto the TV or whatever it is you want it to do. And I think that's kind of a generic concept and can be very much extended to all your smart speakers around your home. And you can start asking yourself questions about, well, okay, many years ago I would have had one microphone in my home, which is my, in my telephone, right? Nowadays you've probably got 50 microphones in your house or more. And they might be able to help you hear better, right? If you can tap into those in a smart way, and if you can figure out the usability for that and how your hearing might follow around these things in the room, and you can use them to actually augment and improve what you're hearing, because instead of having 2 ears now just on your head, you've got 50 around your house that can do all sorts of things. So I think that's going to be a huge growth area for hearables, and there's some real, incredible potential that can be had there, but some amazing technological challenges to solve there, and usability challenges as well. I'm just trying to figure out what it should be doing when is one of the bigger problems, right? You can probably get the tech working already, but making it actually seamless and usable and useful is probably another challenge.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think kind of, I can see a world where that this kind of a standardized quality of data that you can get out there from these different sources. And our long-term ambition with Kokoon is not to be tied to devices. It's to basically be a company that process data of that individual in the real world and give them personalized coaching based on that data. And kind of right now we have to make the devices because there's not the accuracy in the other metrics out there, that there's not the kind of controlled way of delivering it. But we're looking forward to a world where we're not constrained to our devices, where we can work with many different devices and we can get the kind of level of insight that we need and deliver it back. So that's the kind of the world that we're looking forward to, because really we're a feedback loop, we're a kind of control system where we're learning about the individual and then kind of speaking to them and giving them insights back. Yeah.
It's fascinating. I mean, I can imagine it's a little way off in terms of what you guys.
Oh, it's a long way off. Yeah.
Because of user experience issues, not least. I mean, your product is inherently designed to be slept in, whereas many others will not be, I guess. So Johannes, on that note around sort of where the hearable stops and where other things start, I suppose. What's the limit of what we're able to do with the signals that are coming from the sensors in the ear? Batteries, all this stuff's been talked about. There's also the data transport side of things. Networks are not what they could be. Will they ever be there? Ubiquitously, unlikely for some time. 5G is going to solve all of our problems. Where are we at with getting that information out of the ear, and how much can we kind of process on board, as it were, at this stage?
Yeah. So at the moment, let's say it's really this distributing the data. It's, of course, we can measure a lot. We also increase the runtime, increase the battery capacity and something like that. But at the end, sometimes, of course, you can use the ear for the information. So you get a beep or you get a sound or something like that. But normally you want to transfer the data, because normally you also have to visualize the data. So the user, the doctor, or who else wants to see the data and not hear data. And then, of course, at the moment, you use Bluetooth, which is quite good, but it's also limited. If you go to 5G, then the power, it's the other problem. So normally, it's this typical Bluetooth to Wi-Fi, Bluetooth to something other. You need some hub, and if you then, so this will be, I guess, in the next years still a challenge. That at the ear it has to be small. It has to be very small. So you can't. So normally you need some kind of hub for the data. But at the end, it would be quite good if, let's say, every smartphone can receive my data and then transferring it to my data, to my database or something like that. So normally it's always my data is coming to my smartphone. If my smartphone is not there, it's lost or it's stored there or something like that. But there are so many devices around who can receive on the one side Bluetooth signals and on the other side transfer to a server. So that's what I hopefully, but I'm not sure if it really will happen, that I'm sending the data and it will go to my cloud solution or something like that. But I don't know via which hub it was going. Of course, privacy, encryption, and something like that, that's a big challenge then. But at the end, it would be very nice, because this is normally the real challenge when you are at the ear. The transfer to a cloud solution or something like that. And then, of course, with medical, in real time, medical grade, with everything related there. But at the end, I guess it could help a lot, because when I have an accident, my data is in the clinic and they know what to do, and they can do something like that. So, and if I'm sleeping, if I want to track my fertility, everything, it's the same setting, but you need the data not at your ear, you need the data somewhere else.
So, okay, let's be contentious then. What about smartphones? We sort of use this horrible thing that's the user experience is terrible. It's kind of bulky, and I like to imagine at some point in time, I won't give a particular point in time, but at some point in time, I see that disappearing. And we talked about using the hearing as an interface. Okay, well, first of all, starting with the smartwatch, this is a sort of move in the right direction to some degree. We've got a screen, we've got better sensors in a smartwatch than we have in a smartphone. So we've got health implications with a smartwatch, but there are some obvious problems. Would it be possible for us to kind of move towards ears and potentially glasses as the killer kind of combination for all of our connectivity needs? Polly, help me out with that. Can we get rid of the smartphone?
I don't think we'll get rid of it, and not anytime soon anyway, but definitely I'd like to see us reduce our reliance on it. And it's interesting you bring up smartwatches. I think in some ways they're worse because, like what you said earlier about when you're in a situation with somebody and you're looking at your screen and they're wondering if you really want to be there or if you're somewhere else. And I find when you're with somebody who has a smartwatch and they keep looking at it, it's this very strange thing where what it used to mean when somebody looked at their watch was they really need to be somewhere, or they're bored, or they're not interested in being where they are. But yeah, I think there are definitely a lot of apps that could be translated or transferred from the visual domain into the audio only domain. There are a lot that can't as well, because, for example, if you glance at your smartphone, you can see immediately what time it is, what's the date, what your battery life is, who texted you, what's on your calendar. Like, you can see that and process it almost immediately, because the visual to mental path there is like very, very quick. Whereas with audio, it's slower and it's lower bandwidth. So the same information might be battery 70%, and this kind of thing that you get with audio at the moment. But then I mentioned earlier the field of auditory display, where you transfer data from being in this spoken or written form and into series of kind of beeps and boops, or different things that you can more naturally understand, like a kind of audio shorthand. So I'd really like to see apps, starting to be transferred over into the audio only domain, the ones that can. So like navigation, or being able to control your hearing device so you can change what you're hearing in a certain setting, like choose which direction you want to hear from, or choose which hearing profile, or boost the bass, or whatever it is. And that you can do that without having to get out of your present environment and enter this other world, but to just adjust it on the go.
That's fascinating. I love the idea of kind of, getting around that bandwidth, as you call it, that limitation between visual and audible. Have you got stuff that you do with what you're working on, Alan, in terms of a kind of layered and multifaceted approach to audio, or is it just about the hearing and the sound, as it were, from the environment?
Yeah, we do have a bit of a multifaceted approach, because our products are a bit different from traditional hearables, where generally you have that, a lot of hearables product talk about transparency, and it's off most of the time. You have to enable it, but our products is kind of on, because hearing's the first application, and music and phone calls and that sort of thing are kind of the second application. So our products are always layering the phone call and the music and those sort of things together with your your environmental sound. And in a way that the systems that do that are a little bit artificial at the moment, because you hear a sound that's being presented, it's not rendered in your environment, if that makes sense. So sound generated from around you is presented in a way that matches what you see. So it's going to come from a certain direction, and you can see that with your eyes and that sort of thing. Whereas sound from your devices and through the the audio link is presented in a bit of a different way. So I think there is a lot of opportunity there to really explore how you do those sort of things, and how you create those auditory scenes and that sort of thing. And I think Polly's really right there about the bandwidth of hearing, and what is the right information to give through your ears. It's probably not going to be the same as what you present visually, right? You probably want to do something a little bit different there, and find ways to augment rather than replace. And they do that in things like airplanes. In an airplane cockpit, the plane talks to you as it's landing, right? So people know, people have found ways to do that, and I think there's probably big scope to do that in hearables still too.
It feels to me like there are very few technologies which are in any way sensitive to other people beyond the user. So like smartphones, watches, all of it, it's kind of a distraction from a social interaction. And I haven't really seen a product that kind of pays any attention to any other users apart from the one that's right there, and that's not done particularly well in many cases. So think there's a lot of food for sort of thought around and the idea of sort of community, experience as well as your own.
Yeah, and on that topic, sounds really interesting thing. You can kind of close your eyes and not look at something, and you can not touch something if you don't want to feel it, and you can not eat it if you don't want to taste it, but your ears are always on. And traditionally, if you want to present something, in an auditory way, without hearables, everyone hears it, right? But hearables give you a different way. You can provide more personalized information to people now, and getting back to that kind of all-day way,
or less experience for the community. You're actually creating a barrier. So right. That's what I'm saying. But no, it goes both ways. But I'm gonna ask a couple of questions. Sorry to interject there, Alan, but we're almost at the end of the time. I wanted to kind of ask two things. First of all, just quickly to go around and see what your biggest challenge is right now. Where are you at with your work, and what's the thing that that keeps you up at night? What are you trying to solve right now? Let's start with Polly.
I think funding is always an issue for startups, and certainly for us. So I think there's so many exciting things to work on and to solve in this area, like all the different engineering challenges. There's so many opportunities, a lot of them we talked about today. The limitation is on how much funding we can get to actually work on them.
Tim?
I'd probably echo that, to be honest. I think there's so much opportunity there, and it's sometimes frustrating at the limitations of how fast we can run at these things, and it tends to be how tight a team can we manage with our runway, etc. I think kind of there's so much potential, and it's tremendously exciting that I think it's just a matter of time, really.
Alan.
Yeah, Hearable is incredibly multidisciplinary, and to really solve the problems, you have to tick a lot of boxes to make good hearables, and that's really a challenge. One of the things we're always focusing on is the user experience and bringing like an at-home hearing experience. And how do you do that? Because that service is traditionally delivered by audiologists in a clinic. So that's one of the things we focus on really hard, and it's a lot more than the device. There's a lot of human factors that need to be taken into account and brought into the hearables and the journey. So that's a big focus for us.
Fantastic. And Johannes, what's your challenge for 2021?
Yeah, the challenge is for us, it's the let's say the conservative medical market. So the medical market, it's very slow. Now it's a little bit speeding up based on Corona, but it's the digitalization, the openness for new technologies is really, you have to push it. I don't know, we push it since 8 years roundabout, and now we are at where we say, okay, now we are where we wanted to be 7 years ago. So it's very slow, and this is sometimes a little bit frustrating, but I guess it's now getting better.
Fantastic. Well, good luck to all of you. I'm going to ask one final question. Will Apple enter the health tech market this year with a hearable product?
I would say they already have.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, with the new iOS, you can already put in your hearing profile and adjust the transparency to your own hearing profile. So I would say that's a health application.
Yeah, fair point. I was probably referring a bit more to sensors and kind of a bigger play, but yeah, no, I think it's definitely shows a sign, doesn't it? They're going in that direction. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, we definitely believe that at some point they're going to get more sophisticated with what they do. I think they're typically a follower after things are proven out. I think they were going to want to see the clear use cases, the clear kind of customer, demand for these things.
So is that a no maybe in 2021? Maybe
2021. Yeah, I really doubt that they're going to do anything that's not been done or proven out before, but we'll see.
There's a fair bit out there, though. Let's face it. I mean, it's not. Philips have got an established technology in the market. I've got some in my bag, and you guys are coming out with stuff. So I think it'll be quite quick. I would say they will come out with something, to be honest. But I'm putting my neck on the line big time there. Alan, what do you reckon?
I wouldn't want to speculate. They so they can do anything. Yeah, no, I'll sit on the fence there. Yeah, they could. Yeah, you don't know what they're going to do. They're yeah.
We'll see. Johannes?
We'll see.
Yeah, I think it's the direction where they are leading to. So it's quite obvious, I would say. And the other side, it makes sense. That's the other. We'll
see where it goes. It's fantastic to have spoken to you all. I really appreciate your time and for coming on the track today. As I said at the beginning, we'll have questions coming up next. So hopefully there's some good stuff in the pipeline for that. Just to note, all the speakers have their information on thrivewearables.com/giant2020. If you'd like to go and hook up with them and connect and talk about more of what you've heard today, please do. But yeah, carry on with questions in the various channels, and we'll get over to those straight away now. So thanks again to the panel for today's session.
Can't see from this window. I'm gonna hope for the best, Pauline, and just ask you a question whilst we're here, waiting for clarity on how to use this. But I'm going to ask you this question. Listening to your answer on the kind of application side, and we talked a bit about some of the exciting opportunities. Johannes talked about, all the signals in the ears and stuff. I just thought maybe you could tell us a bit about some of the stuff you're working on at the moment and the challenges you're confronting in the lab.
Yeah. So, okay. I mean, we're kind of somewhat in stealth mode with the with our own products. So we're at the moment providing engineering services to other companies. What I can say is we're based here in Fraunhofer Institute in Berlin, and they're experts in micro integration of electronics. So a lot of what we're working on is this miniaturization piece, and how do you make the electronics small enough to fit into the ear and to be able to be molded into different form factors. So it's not just the usual kind of bud that you see now. And that kind of aligns with our mission of helping more hearables get to market, so that if we can provide more options for how you can put these things together, it's not just going to be the same thing with a different brand on it for every product. It can actually there can be some variety in the different types of hearables that we can have, and they can be specialized for lots of different things.
So is there a kind of bit of platform technology that we're going to end up having at some point, like something that we use to like a smartphone or like a smartwatch? There's a set amount of tech in each of those that's kind of standardized. Are we getting to that point, or is it still very sort of bleeding edge with hearable elements?
Yeah, and I think it remains to be seen who will be the provider of that platform. We'll probably see some kind of operating system, but also on the hardware side. I mean, you have Qualcomm at the moment. They provide quite a good platform for hearables for companies that aren't Apple and don't have their own chip. So yeah, I think we'll start to see that all get built out. It's just at the moment we're kind of at that inflection point where people are realizing that hearables and true wireless headphones are a really big thing, and they're a big consumer product. They're not just a niche product. So I think, from here on, we'll start to see those platforms being built out.
Because there are a few players, aren't there, in the space in terms of that sort of algorithm layer, Valencell and WBD and of course Apple. It's sometimes sort of hard to know, where it's going to go and how it's going to consolidate. And I think I saw some stuff in the news today. I put it onto LinkedIn about this sort of super micro battery technology. Have you heard of this stuff? Supercapacitor?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I just saw it yesterday, so I didn't really read the full article. It was amazing. Like we were talking, I think, in our session earlier on about batteries needing to be half the size, and then all of a sudden I saw this thing. So have you seen much about these supercapacitors?
Not a lot, but yeah, I've heard that that's a direction that could take us to smaller power supplies. So yeah, as we talked about, batteries are always the problem. Like, you know, we're doing this work on miniaturization of electronics and technologies, but it's kind of insignificant, some of it, until you can reduce, because the battery is so big compared to everything else. You can reduce all the size of all the other electronics, but until you can reduce the battery, it probably won't have too much effect. So yeah, something like that coming out would be pretty amazing.
Yeah, so I guess you tend to be using lithium-ion technologies as the rest of us are.
Yeah, lithium-ion, lithium polymer. Yeah.
Yeah. Johannes, hi. Oh, he's gone.
Thought he was going to take the pressure off me there for a second. But.
No, it's all on you. I saw Alan was in the other room as well, so I was expecting Alan to be with us, but I'm not entirely sure. Just bear with me a sec. I think we might have got to 2 o'clock, so we may be able to dodge a bullet here. I think, because I think probably the next session is starting. So I'm not sure if people can hear us, but thank you to Polly for stepping in and answering some questions. And enjoy the rest of the show, everyone.
So hello, everyone. Thanks for joining our track on wearables redefining healthcare. We're delighted to be back at the Giant Health Show again this year for the 3rd year running. And we have 5 sessions of really exciting speakers lined up for you. We're taking the roundtable format, so we'll have a person chairing the session, and we'll talk around a theme for each of the sessions. And we'll have a section at the end of that for questions where you guys can all link into us and ask us questions, and we'll put those to the panel live on the day of the show. So we are a design and development company, and Thrive have been working around the world of health and wellness for quite some time, and working on wearable technologies has really gone through some incredible changes over the last few years. And we're really excited to be now at a point where we're really having impact in creating some wearable technology products that really help to enhance people's lives and to provide preventative and predictive healthcare opportunities. If you want to connect with us or any of the speakers at our sessions, please go to thrivewearables.com/giant2020, where you can get information about all the speakers and connect with our team and with the team who are involved with the show. This session coming up today is called Muscle Stimulation for Rehabilitation and Recovery. And it's my great pleasure to welcome Barbara Shepherd to introduce and to run that panel discussion today. Barbara is the Head of Business Engagement at Manchester Fashion Institute and the Chair of the Steering Committee of the eTextile Network in the UK. Barbara, welcome to the Thrive Wearables track, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Jacob. I'd just like to say to everybody in the audience and the panel, it's a real pleasure to be working with the team today. There's expertise across academia and industry, which for me is really important because it's a combination of all of us working together. And hopefully in the audience we'll have members from KTN and Innovate UK, because there is funding available for all of us to work collaboratively together to the benefit of the sector. So what I'd like to do now is then introduce you to the panel. And I'll start off first with Dave Sandbach from Thrive. Over to you, Dave.
Oh, hi. Yes, I'm Dave Sandbach, Director of Innovation at Thrive Wearables. I've been with the company for 4 years, and I have a personal background going back a long way into the late 90s in e-textiles, where we overcame problems of putting prototypes into mass production for consumer electronics kind of standards, possibly for the first time back in 2001. My name is on a number of patents in that space. At Thrive, we work in tandem with clients and on our own internal innovation. And we've been involved in several very interesting projects in this space.
Brilliant, Dave. I'd now like to introduce one of our leading UK academics in this field, Kai Yang from the University of Southampton.
Thank you, Barbara. My name is Kai Yang. I'm an associate professor at the University of Southampton. I have worked on electronic textile for over 10 years. My research focuses really on the electronic textile-based wearable technology for healthcare. The current project I'm working on is funded by EPSRC. It's an EPSRC fellowship to develop advanced e-textiles for wearable therapeutic, and the initial application will be for the joint pain relief for people with osteoarthritis knee. Before, I was principal investigator of a medical research council funded project called the Smart Move. In the Smart Move project, we developed a wearable training system for stroke upper limb rehabilitation. Apart from my academic research, I also have a great passion on the enterprise business, because to me, and the main aim of the research is to develop something that can benefit the end user. I co-founded a company called Smart Fabric Inks, which is a Southampton University spin-out company, supply functional inks for print electronics on textile. And I'm also founder of a company called eTexsense. eTexsense develop a wearable e-textile for healthcare application. As Barbara also mentioned, we got the eTextile network, which is a platform to bring together academia, industry, and the people in other sectors work together to speed up the innovation on e-textile. Thank you.
Fantastic. And last but not least, I've got Phil Konofsky from Chimera. Over to you, Phil.
Thanks, Barbara. Afternoon, everyone. My name is Phil Konofsky, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Chimera. I've got a background in electronic engineering and cybernetics with a research focus in wearable technologies. Joined Chimera back in 2015 when it was still a young budding company, and we're since then been developing the new smart garment technologies, looking to develop new technologies for biomedical monitoring, all embedded in smart garments. And so we have a focus in professional sports and medical applications. That's really where we live and where we work. And yeah, it's quite exciting to be part of this panel and discussing a few of the challenges and opportunities for this sector.
Thanks, Phil. That's great. Just a little bit more background on myself. Quite different to everybody else on this panel. I'm a garment engineer. I've worked in the sector for over 25 years. I'm late to the university industry collaboration side. Started in university later in my career, and I'm really passionate about how we can link what we're doing in terms of research and our academic excellence in the UK to supporting our industries, many of which are SMEs in the sector. So really keen for anybody out there who wants to follow up with me or my team at the Manchester Fashion Institute at Manchester Metropolitan University. So that's everybody on the panel for today. You will have opportunities to ask us questions. Any that we can't answer today, we will get back to you. So feel free throughout this presentation to upload any of your questions. And I'll kick off the panel. It's going to be interactive and quite relaxed because we've talked about how we want this to come across to the sector so that it's engaging for you listening, but also that you get the most out of the session today. First question is going to be for you, Dave. Your business works across lots of different areas. What forms of muscle stimulation are currently out there now in the sector?
I guess to give it context, there is TENS technology, which has been out there for a long time, which is a muscle stimulation technology. But we're seeing a lot of change in the space recently with training aids largely. I think Kai and Phil will both have things to say on this subject as well. But we've also done some interesting work recently with mechanical stimulation, so using specific frequencies of mechanical vibration, which is also very promising for kind of well-being applications and pain relief.
What about you, Phil, on your side in terms of muscle stimulation and the work you're doing on Chimera?
So I guess we fall under the more passive technologies with what we've been doing. So there's obviously muscle stimulation with electrical signals. But what we've been doing and what our main technology that's out there at the moment is looking at an infrared emitting technology. So one that's actually, as I said, a passive technology, so it doesn't use any batteries or wires or electronics or things like that, but instead absorbs energy, wasted energy from the wearer and ambient light in the surroundings and converts it to far infrared, which possibly some audience members will recognize that term, or its use in infrared saunas or infrared therapy lamps. They're quite popular and were very popular back in the day for sports rehabilitation.
Right.
And essentially, it's the same principle. You're stimulating the muscle, you're increasing blood flow, you're increasing oxygenation, and you're able to accelerate performance and recovery. And so this is the key technology we've been developing, and this is something that's, as I said, out on the market and being used by all sorts of athletes, from your Olympic gold medalists all the way to your weekend warriors and people who are just interested in keeping fit, increasing their recovery, and just getting better.
So Kai, in relation to you then in your academic and your research work, is it really possible to restore function by doing this through muscle stimulation? Is this, from a research point of view, would you like to discuss to the panel how you feel your work contributes to this area?
Yes, the muscle stimulation is a technology or device has existed for quite a long time. There's strong clinical evidence says which is backed by clinical trials, say functional electric stimulation, so for FES can restore, let's say, for example, for the stroke rehabilitation, which is an area I worked on, can restore the arm leg function post-stroke. How it works is also in a normal situation, healthy human being, we control activity, use a brain, but there's evidence actually when you do the movement, even it's artificial movement enabled, for example, FES, there's a signal build which can feed back to the brain, which if you do the intensive exercise for a long time, it will build the new link on the brain or damage the brain, which can be repaired the link. So yeah, so from that aspect, it is scientifically backed. Also, NINES, which is UK body to publish the evidence, make recommendation for the NHS to use the technology. There's also support. FES should be used to restore the functional activities. From the business point of view, there has been many companies sell this type of device, and there's a lot of patients has benefit by using this device to regain their functions. So I would say there's pretty strong evidence it works, but like any or most of the medical device, even it work for most people, it doesn't necessarily work for everyone. So that's why the initial assessment session is very important, because there we do find a situation which the technology don't work. So I think it's important in the initial session to assess whether this is the right technology, even with people it works, what is the best program to use together with the device to optimize the treatment.
Okay, brilliant. Dave, electrode technology is a key priority in the work that your team at Thrive do. How does this requirement to pass current into the body affect the design of high performance electrode technologies?
Yes, I think there's a lot of promise in this area. So traditionally, TENS devices, for example, needed a gel or a wet electrode to pass current into the body. Increasingly with silicons and loaded silicons and conductive polymers, even conductive textiles, it is possible to produce products with dry electrodes that will safely pass current into through the skin and to trigger those neurons that stimulate that activate the muscles. It opens up a whole new set of possibilities in terms of garments and integrating the electrodes into wearable devices. And I think we'll maybe come onto it and explore it a little bit further, but understanding the position that somebody's body is in and the way that they're moving and timing your intervention accordingly is sort of particularly promising. So these things need to become integrated into clothing to be properly useful and roll out as into products.
Okay, brilliant. Another one then, one for you, Phil. In your world of sports tech, where Chimera are operating at a senior level, are you seeing a need for new recovery approaches? Does this cover the day-to-day training and performance, or is it more about injury recovery for your business?
So absolutely, this is something that covers both performance and day-to-day. In something like sports, where it's so competitive and all the athletes want that extra bit of edge and just be able to win gold, it's one of those things where you have to look at the entire training regime, almost your entire lifestyle, and look at how you can apply sports tech to improve your performance, improve your recovery. And when we say recovery, it's a bit of a technical term in that we're not only talking about injury recovery. Injury is almost the last place you want to be, because then you're out for several weeks. Your performance naturally might dip, or if you're not particularly, let's say, younger, you probably won't be able to get to the same peak that you get to. So you want to keep away from injury. So when we say recovery, we're talking about that day in and day out. If you're performing at a maximum level, how does your body recover from that very strenuous activity that you had just performed, and being able to go again and again. And the reason you'd want to focus a lot, not just on improving your performance with reps and conditioning, but also recovery, is because it's that day-to-day, day in, day out activities that actually builds you up and builds up your performance long term, and obviously safeguards you as well from injury. So absolutely, there's always going to be a need for new recovery approaches within the sports industry. And there are some technologies that come in and out of fashion. There's a few pseudo technologies that people are interested in, and maybe they come in and they're trendy because maybe some athletes use them or what have you, but then they sort of fall out of fashion. So naturally, in this place, having anything that's clinically evidence or anything that is proven to work is going to be a massive benefit. And like electrostimulation being a clinically beneficial technology with many clinical research sort of backing that up, the technology that we've been applying with infrared is also clinically backed. And again, that's how we've been able to access some of the premiership leagues or the top national teams, because we're coming in not as potentially a pseudoscience, but something that's actually backed by evidence. And that's really worked for us.
So Kai, then, in terms of muscle stimulation and sensing going hand in hand to create biofeedback, what are your views on the benefits of deploying this? And could you give the audience some examples of how this actually happens?
I think because stimulation is used to strengthen muscle in general and restore the movement, while on the other hand, the sensing, let's say for example the ECG, the EMG, which can be used to give the indicate about the biopotential function. By bringing these two together, personally, I think one of the biggest benefit is it closes the loop. It provides the user how they are getting on with their recovery. Because once somebody told me they were quite exciting when they say actually you can see the muscle movement. Also, he's in the very early stage, wasn't able to kind of do the movement completely rely on the muscle, but because he saw there's kind of start to strengthen muscle. This kind of information is very important to the patient because it gives them the hope actually there's something change, something is going in the right direction. So that is very good motivation both for sports, fitness in general, because we tend to do more when we know what's going on. And it's particularly even more important for rehabilitation recovery. Some example, for example, with the FES muscle stimulation, if we say with the EMG work together, it can inform the end user how they are getting on with their activity, the muscle recovery, how stronger it becomes. It will motivate the user to use it more. As they use more, because it's rehabilitation is through the intensive practice, which the intensive component is very important. So it will enable them to do more. Even with another example is, for example, the FES work together with the EEG, which is for brain signal measurement. There has to be a kind of parallel for technology. For example, when you have a stroke, it sounds crazy, but it is true. If you think about the activity you want to do through this imagination, actually it contributes to the recovery of the neural system. If you let's think about scenario which through decoding the EEG signal, we can work out what is the patient's intention, what activity they would like to do. Then use FES to trigger the stimulation. Actually, they can imagine it at the same time they can do the rehabilitation activity. Bringing those two technologies together, I think it will bring more hope, make the treatment more effective. So I think it's a trend for the future development, because by bringing those technologies together, they can serve different needs, and it's also provided the potential for example, the remote monitoring, because the healthcare professional or the coach could think how people are getting on with their recovery or rehabilitation process. So yeah, that's
great. Well, I know you're in agreement on this one, Dave, because I can see you nodding your head, but I know you've got years of experience working on the design side of this. So for you, really, what technologies work alongside EMS to enhance rehabilitation and recovery applications in your experience?
Yeah, I think we're particularly sort of excited about the possibilities when you start combining the FES technology in particular, but EMS in general, with synergistic technologies. And I would very much put Phil's, the work that Chimera do in with that. So, you know, looking at the research that is behind the Chimera far infrared emitting ceramic loaded textiles. In our interpretation, the recovery that Phil spoke about in terms of training recovery for athletes does blur into other areas of recovery. We know that there's clinical evidence that it supports healing as well, potentially. So, and and what Kai was just talking about then, which is when you combine, when you're able to bring in sort of visualization tools to help with a person's recovery. So feeling that the muscle is doing something and understanding visually how that works, and being able to visualize a future situation where that limb is moving properly again, perhaps with the help of technology and CGI and things like that. We're particularly interested, and we've had some great discussions with collaborators and potential collaborators in these areas where we combine things together. But I would say, you know, just to kind of run through a list, inertial measurement units, you know, accelerometer type things, are easily integratable into garments now. And so it's possible to know how a limb is moving relative to another, and to actually build a full picture of how a whole body is moving. And as I mentioned earlier, timing, kind of targeted interventions using muscle stimulation brings a whole world of possibilities, really, in terms of the work that Kai is doing in particular, but there are lots of other sort of similar and parallel activities that we know about where we see that space opening up. I mean, please jump in, Phil and Kai.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's particularly exciting at the moment, is because of the fusion of this intervention technology with the sensing technologies that are available, and being able to fuse the analysis that's coming in from all of these sensors into something meaningful that you can then act on with the muscle stimulation, opens up really big possibilities.
So what's new? What's new, Phil, for you in your world in relation to what Dave's outlined? You know, what's the new direction for Chimera?
Well, I'll take it in two parts. So definitely, I agree with Dave that we're coming to the point where just having a single tool, if you were, that's giving you one measurement or one data point back on, is no longer cuts it. You talk to professional coaches, you talk to trainers. It's not just about providing more data. It is from a software algorithmic point of view. You want to be able to measure all sorts of data points and apply all sorts of different methodology for recovery or performance monitoring, and then double back on yourself and make sure that they're doing what you're expecting. But then the humans, the coaches, the trainers who are there, who have full schedules and are trying to basically decide how are they going to deal with a 22-man squad or a 42-man squad, depending on your team. They just want the insight. They want to be able to say, right, okay, I've got some system telling me to do X, and this is the level of confidence it's giving me. And we all know in the sort of computer science space, to be able to give that level of confidence, you're going to need more data. So in terms of the data fusion, absolutely agree. In terms of combining different methodologies into, let's say, a single service offering, a single packet, makes absolute business sense. And that sort of segues me right into what we're doing with Chimera, which is we are looking at smart garment technologies that are actually combining a whole host of different sensors and different capabilities in there. Because again, you can buy individual systems that don't talk to each other, but then you're losing a lot of insight, and then you're relying on the coaches and physios to actually take all that data and actually act on it. And the reality is that doesn't really happen anymore. There's too much going on. So you need to be able to look at a single service offering or a single solution that's giving you all of that insight.
So Kai, how does academia and research respond to this? Because the industrial people on the panel are saying it needs to be a much broader approach. Universities tend to silo their research. So how can we respond to what the sector needs?
We are working very hard to keep the speed with the requirement, got to say. I totally agree with Phil, Dave. It's becomes more connected, a whole system which can serve the end user needs. For example, we used to focus only on the, because with research it's always good to start with somewhere to see works before you build the whole system. But we totally agree. For example, with the pain relief, even stroke rehabilitation, what we did is, we need to build a system, demonstrate it work. Then we need to add the functions. One example is we started with this field, Dave might know. We started with wearable TENS, which is to improve the usability and the effectiveness through the electronic part. Then we think about what really matters to the end user. For example, they want to know how much they can bend their knee, how much activity they have done. So we develop a yarn form electronic sensor, which is embedded the paradigm form of the electronic component in a thin, long yarn. And we can weave into the textile, which provide a kind of invisible integration to this measurement. Because we think, end user, you need to make as easy as possible. All the complicated technology should go just behind. When you present to the end user, it need to be something well designed, simple use. That's why we work with companies like Chimera, Strive Wearables, because we don't have that expertise, but we know there's needs. So we work to bring all this together and also add the technology innovation parts.
So Kai, do you think the e-textile network then could support the sector because it brings together lots of different academic research in this area in the UK as a collective? Do you think it's able to support what the industry sector needs?
Yes, I think e-textile network is a very tiny kind of platform. Because we are working in academia, we also have some link with industry because, as I mentioned, we got some interest in the companies like startups, spin-out company we formed. So we know there will be, we talk different language, we have different priority, but I think in the end, we all have the same goal is we want to develop something useful. So with the textile network, it brings together all the technology developers, regardless they are from industry or academia or the end user sector. So with this, we are able to share the knowledge. We are not try not to repeat the same mistake. We are build on the great technology others already have. To have not a shortcut, but a more straight kind of towards what we deliver. So e-textile network, the main activity, for example, we send a newsletter including all those new development in the area. We signpost to find the opportunities, collaboration required, and also we have annual conference, national conference. So I think it's a great platform to, bring people together.
Okay, well, that should be good. That should be good news for the audience. So you'll be able to connect with Kai on that. One then for you, Phil. Not a lot of companies have managed. There's been a lot of research, but actually taking the research and putting it into action in terms of developing electronic fabric technologies from prototype in a lab to real life in production. Tell us how complicated that's been for Chimera and how long's the journey been?
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge, really, because I think, again, coming from an electronic engineering background, I think that while it's a challenging bit of technological work to actually implement it, it's the one stumbling block that we in this sort of market sector have had is really the application and trying to find that application, that winner application that's actually motivating investors, motivating people to invest time and energy into actually developing a product. Because a lot of work has happened in industry over the last couple of decades in this field. That's no doubt. But it's that step, taking it from lab to manufacturing to marketing, which is arguably a really expensive bit of work. Usually there isn't that much public funding available for this kind of work. There is some, but not as much as for example, for rudimentary or early stage research. And so a lot of companies are a bit hesitant to go for it if they don't find that killer application. And we've seen companies come and go actually in this field as well, simply because they couldn't find that application. So for Chimera, our journey really started in earnest in 2016, where we won our first Innovate UK application, looking at incorporating electronics into some sort of garment assembly. And since then, we've been able to leverage that with investment. We've been able to use our current sportswear revenue to actually fund our R&D. So a lot of it has kind of been on our own back to really push it forward and really finding the application, or let's say the killer application to do it. Personally, we feel that it's professional sports and it's medical, really. Mass market is interesting, but mass market is very tough. A lot of companies that aren't here anymore, they've gone through the whole, okay, let's try to develop something that pleases everyone. But you try to please everyone, you don't please anyone. And really that's the challenge. So for us, the biggest thing has been being able to navigate that market and figuring out, okay, where do we actually want to invest our time and resources, which is a bit challenging when you don't have, several hundreds of millions in a bank account.
So Dave, would you agree with Phil in relation to the two areas where he sees the potential for the technology to apply itself?
Yes, I think I'm fairly kind of long in the tooth as well in this area, because I co-founded a company that was venture capital backed, and it was set up in 1998. And this was, as I mentioned before, we put a conductive textile product, which was essentially like a touchscreen in fabric, but long way back. And we sort of fought various battles to get the textile industry to produce things to consistent tolerances that were suitable for a consumer electronics product. And then 100,000 flexible keyboards that wrapped around a Palm PDA, if you can remember what one of those is, were produced under license for Logitech, and we worked with Levi's and Nokia and Microsoft and lots of other companies. I think the fundamental problem that the kind of investment caused, it was heavily invested through venture capital, was a drive to sell lots of consumer electronics products, even though that's not really the right space for this technology. So absolutely, Phil, and we've had a lot of discussions with Phil in the past as well, and we know that we share the same view on this already. But if you're going to use textiles in a product, especially conductive textiles in specialist applications, make sure you can't do it any other way as a very first step. Will a flex circuit do it, etc., etc. And it's these kinds of applications in medical and garment integrated applications where it has to be, for example, the subject that we're talking about now, then yes, it's absolutely a suitable technology for that. If it's just a flexible circuit that you need, really try and think of some other way to do it first. So our approach here is, over the years you develop a lot of kind of tools and techniques that can be applied to integrate things according to what's needed. So sooner or later it ends up with a PCB at some point if you're going to make a sort of reasonably complex circuit, and therefore you've got hard lumps to sort of integrate alongside your flexible stuff. And there are various sort of tried and tested techniques for sort of managing that and making sure that it's robust and washable and things like that as well. But these are all hurdles that have been overcome through much struggle in some ways back in the day when it was all unknown.
So in terms of struggle, this is a key one really for you, Kai, because both of the boys reckon this was a question for you. In terms of regulatory requirements, particularly when you're working with stimulating muscles, it's high risk. Do you see any changes coming in this area? There's a lot of ethics involved around what you're going to be able to do. What's your view as a leading academic in this area?
I might want to disagree. Actually, I don't think it's high risk for muscle stimulation.
Okay, good.
Because as I said, the muscle stimulation device has been there for quite a long time. People use it, benefit from the treatment. There's very rare case, say, kind of reported damage. On the other hand, there's a kind of very rigorous regulatory you need to meet in order to put your product on the market. For example, they have, a lot of it's quite a lot of technical work need to do to test based on, for example, start with all this data collected in the lab to. For example, how robust it is, make sure it's biocompatible, not kind of bring any damage to the skin. The current level shouldn't be exceed a certain level. And also, especially for home use, there's another set of complicated, very rigorous tests you need to go through in order for home use. So personally, I'm very confident by meeting those requirements, which some people see it as a barrier, but actually I think it's a responsible way for the manufacturer, for the government to do it, because by test according to those requirements, to the end you place somebody on something on the market, and that's a place. You already prove it's safe. So I think the regulatory approval is a rigorous process. As long as you follow those doses correctly, I think it will eliminate any potential risk.
So for you, Phil, commercially then, what does that mean? There's a lot of regulations, and I know you work internationally. So in terms of what you have to do in the UK and Europe and what you have to do internationally, how does this whole regulatory process affect a business like yours that's a small business?
Yeah, I would say that in terms of your dedicated effort, you end up quite quickly ramping up how much time you put into the regulatory side of things. I mean, developing a technology that works is only a small part of the whole battle, especially when you're trying to have global reach. We've got different regulations. UK, EU currently following medical device regulations. We've got FDA out in the States, and every country or region will have their own rules. Thankfully, however, there is a concerted effort to have what are known as harmonized standards to make sure that what's valid in one country is usually valid in another. So that's one good thing. So you're not having to start from scratch every time you go to try to get a device out on the market. But it is challenging for a small company with not that much resource or backing or even experience with quality assurance and quality management related to medical devices. It can be quite a daunting task. So yeah, it's something we're going through right now, actually, as a sort of pain point. But we're doing pretty well. Sort of had to take on the role as quality manager for the company as well as chief technology officer. But hey, that's how it goes. But we're building a really, really good system. And the good thing is you're always going to have audits. You're always going to have people looking at you, making sure you're doing it right. And they're not there to make you stumble. They're there to make sure that whatever you're developing is safe. So at least, you're not having necessarily to do it alone. But you certainly need to have some money tucked aside to be able to dedicate towards it. So yeah, from a business perspective, if you're going to develop or want to go into the medical industry, start getting your quality management sorted ASAP. It will save you a lot of hassle and redevelopment work in the long run.
I think I would also contribute, if I may.
Far away.
There are certain things that you can do by design, and this is where integrating into garments comes in. So just for safety reasons alone, you want to be integrating all the kind of cabling and wiring and not have external cables that could become detached and cause problems. There are various things that point towards making sure that everything's kind of cleanly integrated within so the garment and can't be tampered with. I understand you also need to avoid passing current across the body where it could potentially end up going through the heart. And so, you know, just making a kit where you could place electrodes anywhere obviously isn't going to work. There are precedents out there as well. There are FDA approved devices in this space already. And so, you know, as Kai said, there's a pretty long track record of devices that are out there and have been proven safe over time. So there is a starting place for the development of even quite new technology, as long as the right design principles are followed.
Okay. So panel, I'll have to move us on actually, because we're going to run out of time on the end. We have a key question that I'm really interested in the panel. We've got 2 members of the panel from academia, 2 from industry. I'll start with you, Dave. What's your view on getting great academic work into world-changing products? How do we connect, or how should we be connecting? And how can we, as a sector, support what you're doing in this space?
We work quite frequently with academia on very specialist applications. So we tend to we have a network, and so we tend to kind of browse for particularly relevant expertise in particular areas, and then set up some kind of shared destiny collaboration where it's relatively easy to find situations where we can both benefit, we both get out of the relationship.
Do you find the same, Phil?
Yeah, I agree. I think collaboration with research and academic institutions is the way to go. I think that, you know, there was an idea back in the day where, you know, only the biggest companies, the most valuable companies did cutting edge R&D that changed the world and what have you. But realistically, in this day and age, I think all universities need to get on board and become quite entrepreneurial with the way they deal with the research. Because sometimes I'll deal with universities, and primarily we deal with loads of different universities. We'll deal with universities who are on it, and they can see the potential, and we can quickly get past any red tape, and any really exciting cutting edge research can immediately look at getting transferred to industry for the benefit of both the university, the academics, and the business. But there are others who kind of still seem to be stuck in the old days where, you know, it was research and academia for research and academia's sake and publishing papers and not really taking it forward, which some amazing cutting edge research, it's a real shame when essentially it just gets lost to just papers and journals and doesn't actually exit the academic space. So I would definitely encourage any research institution to really get on the boat and work with smaller companies, not the biggest ones in the world, work with smaller companies and help to push out new products based on really exciting research.
I would also just, if I may, just add the timing of when to collaborate with companies like ourselves or Chimera to take something forward is really important. We see a lot of really exciting in 5 years' time technologies that might or might not come to fruition in that sort of timescale, but we're also interested in fairly near-term implementable technologies. So we've got a series of pretty organized steps that we go through. It's quite a lean process where for fairly small amounts of money in terms of a project cost, we can establish the feasibility in quite rough and ready ways, and then it brings in investment to the next stage, and we can take it forward. And then we go through, if you look on our website, we've got a series of kind of established steps that we go through all the way from idea through to production. And it doesn't need to be a kind of hugely costly process, and we can also take it step by step to match in with stakeholder investment into the project.
Okay, and with that, I would this will just finish our session now in terms of the questions, and then the panel will take questions from the floor. I'm now going to go on and summarize what we've actually done so they can do a split. Okay, so in summary, the session today, we've discussed current academic and thinking and research related to muscle stimulation for rehabilitation and recovery. On the panel, we have had two representatives from the academic community, from the University of Southampton and from Manchester Metropolitan University, and a design development business who are actually sponsoring the panel today, and an innovative sportswear business, Chimera. The team have considered what the opportunities are for health and what their businesses and their own and their academic institutions personal approaches have been from the areas that they operate in. And I'd just like to ask each of the panel in terms of, where they're operating, what do they want out of the panel discussion today? And I'll start with you, Kai. The outcome for you and your university in Southampton, what do you want to say to the audience?
Thank you very much. As I said, we have worked on electronic textile for over 10 years. Our key expertise is on the functional materials, including print, electronic inks, manufacture process, and we work on a lot of applications. And today is just a kind of a small fraction of the work we are doing. So we collaborate with industry quite often. So please do reach out if you think we can help. Enjoy the eTextile network, because that's a great place to find the resource and keep informed what's new in the area.
And thanks, Kai, that's great. Over to you, Phil, then. What do you want to say to anybody watching?
Well, firstly, thanks very much for listening to us all speak to you for the last 40 minutes or so. It's a really exciting time. Chimera are relatively early days, but developing all sorts of different technologies. We love collaborating with other SMEs and universities and academic institutions. Not only do we do a lot of development ourselves, but we also have routes to market with our current revenue-generating sportswear. So it puts us in a quite interesting position. And yeah, just generally, we're quite approachable bunch of people. So if you want to get in touch, if you have some ideas for collaboration or different synergies, just my details are on the landing page, the Giant conference and what have you. And yeah, in general, just enjoy the rest of your conference. It's going to be an interesting one.
And last but not least, Dave, over to you.
We're just interested in connections in this space. We've already been involved with a number of clients in this area. We have our own internal innovation work progressing as well. Our mission is about creating exponential gains in health and well-being, and that's what we're looking for, collaborations in that area. But we see this area as particularly exciting just now. It feels like a tipping point, and so we're just opening up the discussion really and see what happens.
Brilliant, that's great, Dave. And as far as myself and the team at Manchester Fashion Institute, we're garment engineers. We're experts in anthropometrics, size and fit, and we're really interested in the development of wearable technology within clothing, because that's our area of expertise. So on behalf of Thrive Wearables and the team at Giant, everybody on the panel would welcome feedback from anybody out there. If you think anybody on the panel are able to help any of your businesses and be a cost benefit for you. Thanks very much.
Okay, so thanks for joining us today at the Thrive Wearables track at the Giant Health Show 2020. It's fantastic to be back at the show. We've been doing a track here for 2 years before this one, and so it's great to be back, and a little different this year, obviously, with all the video conferencing and a different set of technologies and approaches to running the show. So well done to the team at Giant for all they've done to get this working. And it's great to have everyone here today. We've got a really great lineup today for this session, and we're going to be confronting the question, how will technology improve mental health? And it's a really hot topic, of course, at the moment with COVID and with isolation and different ways of working. It's something that's really exciting in terms of the solutions that we may bring to that problem. And I hope today's session will cover some of the major themes. We'll have time at the end of the session where you can ask questions of the panel, and there'll be plenty of time for that. So just engage with us through the session and beyond, and those questions will hopefully get aired and combined together, and we'll continue the discussion in a live format. But first of all, we're going to have a discussion with the panel and cover some themes around the mental health issue and technology solutions therein. Just a bit about Thrive. So we are a design and development consultancy. We work predominantly in the health and wellness space. We are a mission-driven business. We are here to have impact in that world, and we seek to work with collaborators, partners across academia, the health services in the UK especially, but globally, and then with commercial partners as well to really kind of use sensors, data, networks, systems of connected products and services to solve health problems. So it's great to be here at the Giant Health Show again, as I said, yeah, please do contact us if you'd like to be in touch about working with us or getting involved in some of the stuff we're doing. thrivewearables.com/giant2020. You will be able to find links on our website and also profiles for all the speakers at this session and the others. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce the panel who are going to be speaking today. I'm going to go around on my screen as I see it here and start with Deborah Roseman from HeartMath. Would you like to introduce yourself, Deborah?
Thank you so much, Jacob. Yes, I'm the president and CEO of HeartMath Incorporated, and we are one of the probably original companies that in 1991 started to research heart-brain nervous system response and develop tools and technologies for people to basically learn self-regulation skills. We determined that the biggest issue in the world then, and certainly even more so now with all the increased stress, is the lack of ability to emotionally self-manage or self-regulate. So we've been on a mission ever since we started as well to really help what we call activate the heart of humanity. And we do it through research assessments and training programs, content, technology, a whole ecosystem. We have HeartMath UK, a licensee in the UK, HeartMath Benelux, HeartMath Deutschland, so we're in Europe pretty strongly as well as the US. But we basically have a mission that's even stronger now, which is how do we combine mental health issues and self-regulation skills that are scientifically validated with technology feedback, with content, and in an engaging way that is going to motivate people, young and old, to want to actually take charge of themselves and do something and feel and see the benefits and be rewarded as they go. And so that's really our focus and strategy, continues to be that. And there's so much more opportunity now with all of what you're doing and everybody who's on this panel and others who are sensing not only the opportunity, but the great need of humanity to find new ways to address stress. And it's not just addressing stress, it's lifting consciousness, it's giving bigger picture thinking. Because it's only, as we've discovered through our research, through the heart and the heart-mind in alignment, that we're going to come up with new solutions, bigger picture connections, get along with each other, all the things that we haven't been able to do as humanity. And our passion, my passion, is how do we help technology facilitate that rather than separate us?
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic, thank you. Wendy Moore, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I'm Wendy Moore. I'm the COO and Data Protection Officer of Helium, and I couldn't agree with Deborah more. This is in the wake of COVID. We know that chronic stress is a mental health emergency, so that's what we're working on at Helium as well. And so Helium is a drugless and fast-acting stress relief powered by your body's electricity. So it's an evidence-based intervention that reduces anxiety in as little as 4 minutes, and it's uniquely powered by the user. So we're allowing the user to actually see their stress personified so they can learn to control it. Think of it like mental fitness for a new reality. So we're powering these immersive media experiences, allowing the user to both see their stress, learn to control that, and then also bringing in that biometric data from wearables. So an EEG headband or a heart rate monitor using a smartwatch or other wearables that allow you to, as you lower your heart rate, then you can make butterflies hatch in augmented reality. Or in virtual reality, you can make the flurries fly inside of a magic snow globe. So we're teaching the user to self-regulate their brain patterns and create a stored memory that they can then recall again in a stressful situation. So again, I echo what Deborah was talking about. I mean, just building that mental resiliency and tying this in with these beautiful immersive experiences that the user can then recall. In Helium, we can learn to develop either focus or calm, and just by shifting gears within the experience. So we work on both virtual and augmented reality, trying to make these experiences accessible and available on many different platforms and work across hardware agnostic platform. So we're using this biometrically driven immersive content platform to not just track all that data, but also interact with it. And by personifying those stress levels, we're allowing the user to have control over the experience and then are reminded that their thoughts have power. So not only in these virtual worlds that they're learning to control, but in the real world as well. And as we all know, that could not be more needed. So.
Fantastic, thanks, Wendy. Yeah, I guess we're all living in a bit of a virtual world at the moment. So where does the line get drawn? Noga Sapir, please introduce yourself.
Thanks. My name is Noga Sapir. I have a background in textile design and in neuroscience, and I'm the founder and CEO of Reflect Innovation. We're developing Reflect, a soft and tactile biofeedback device that allows users to practice relaxation and reduce stress through a sensory experience that is pleasant and comforting. So Reflect is a soft orb that acts as a companion, like an extension of the user's body, and we aim to create a special bond between the device and the user that can bring comfort and calm anytime and anywhere you go. It's a biofeedback experience that is designed and tactile and is meant to really engage the user in a calming experience in itself. So it's not feeling very technological, very medical, but it's something that anyone can engage with. We are VC backed and we're just wrapping up a successful beta testing. We plan to launch the product next year and make it available for anyone who needs to carve out moments of calm in the day, which is obviously on everyone's minds.
Fantastic. Yeah, sounds familiar. The worlds of hardware and software and kind of trying to get those things to market. It's a long old journey. I think everyone can empathise with that one. And Anna Goodmanson, last of all, but not least.
Sure, yeah, thank you. So I'm Anna Goodmanson. I'm co-founder and CEO of BioSelf Technology. And my background is all in technology, large, small companies. I've been CEO for a small but listed company. I've raised money, pivoted, scaled, failed, all of that. And amongst that, also worked previously with Wearables in the corporate wellbeing space. So it's the second time or third time I combined sort of services and Wearables. And so at BioSelf Technology, we develop technology that deals with stress and anxiety and the sort of illness that come with that. So inflammation, lowered immune system, etc. And our core product, the Sense8, uses near-infrasonic resonance to tone the vagus nerve and that amongst other things, and to provide relaxation in as little as 10 minutes. So, it's based on my co-founder, Stefan Schmanik's decades of work helping some of the most difficult cases of stress and trauma and associated disease, and working with infrasonic and near infrasonic therapies very successfully. And then we've been working, and Jacob's been on the journey with that, just throwing in a little plug for Thrive, very talented people, to be able to bring this to a wider audience. And so we are more focused on the therapeutic element than the tracking, to really sort of bring something to a larger audience to help with stress and anxiety.
Fantastic. Deborah, I'm going to start by asking you a question about heart and mental health, because stress is another connector, I suppose, between everyone on the panel. How does heart health and heart signals and the heart connect with mental health, just for our audience so we understand that?
I think it's a great question, a very important one, because so often mental health research has been all about the brain, some of the nervous system. And what we and others in a field called neurocardiology, which just started in the 1990s, so it's fairly recent, have discovered is that the heart is much more than a blood pump or arteries and veins. There's an intrinsic nervous system in the heart that actually has neurons that are sensory, that feel, learn, and remember and sense. And part of that function is to receive input from the blood and from hormones and from all sorts of chemicals and nervous system from the body, and then send it through the vagal nerve and other pathways to the brain. So the brain then knows how the body feels and will respond according to its habituation or its functions. And so the heart's input to the brain is critical. It's crucial in understanding stress and how the body is processing information. And so what we see is that if you can get the heart rhythm pattern, the heart rate variability or the beat-to-beat changes in heart rate, which reflect our emotional states, synchronized, and then that signal is sent to the brain, it opens up frontal lobes, compassion, care, qualities of heart, brain that we really need as humanity, and we really need to be able to shift depressive moods, anxiety, stress, so we're not looping around there. And the heart's input is critical to that. And so, again, heart math is all about how do we get the two in sync, and what do we do when we're out of sync, and how to get back so that we really can have more heart-based living and higher quality thinking.
Fantastic. So I guess the heart's still inside. When we talk about kind of biofeedback and physical devices and the interaction that we can establish, and Anna and Noga, you'll both have this kind of experience with physical technologies. I thought, Noga, that your product represents this kind of really great interface. It's kind of the archetype of physical connection to digital technology. Can you just explain how that works a bit? How you kind of connect with people in a physical form, and how that then feeds back and creates that loop?
Sure. So Reflect acts as a biofeedback device. It measures parameters of stress through the user's fingers. So it is a knit fabric-covered orb that is a bit soft to the touch. And when the user places their fingers on Reflect, a light lights up, and the LED light changes colors relating to the user's emotional state. So then you can create a biofeedback loop and try to guide yourself towards the light that symbolizes the calm. You can also, of course, do the other way around if you want to energize yourself. But the thing about it is giving you an experience of control. So you get to see how you're feeling. You get to maybe become more aware of your body and of your senses, and you become more in control of it once you see where is it going. So you get to start seeing patterns of when am I most stressed, what things can I think of that make me more relaxed, what breathing patterns should I use. So we guide the user into understanding of themselves using biofeedback as a tool.
Fantastic. And Anna, does that relate to Sensate a bit? Tell us about how that works.
Yeah, I think Deborah was talking about the vagus nerve. And so we are not that focused on the feedback loop, at least not yet. We are really focused on therapeutic element. And so, and this is coming from the fact that, Stefan has been working with thousands of patients and found that this really works. So I think it's super helpful. I think there are a number of different aspects of this. So obviously there is an educational part and understanding ourselves, which in and of itself is really helpful. And that's also why apps, for example, fill a certain purpose, because that help us understand ourselves. Then we got hardware that gives another dimension, which is measuring and getting that feedback. I think there is a lot of interesting aspects about that. I mean, I've got the heart math thing being here. We're massive fan as a company. I'm measuring my sleep with the Oura Ring, which I also think is a good device. But we also have some evidence around certain tracking actually increasing anxiety. And it is really multidimensional. And so we have a lot of empathy about the fact that with mental health, the journey isn't linear. And so to kind of think that you're going to use this and you're going to feel a little bit better every time isn't a helpful sort of expectation. And having worked in technology, habit creation, and all of that for decades myself in other areas, we have to approach mental health and mental well-being in a different way, because it is, if you do sit-ups every morning, you're going to have a more or less linear improvement, whereas that is just not the case when it comes to mental health. So in this mix, we're focusing very much on where we find that we can add the most value and really help give the most relaxation. And Deborah mentioned the vagus nerve, and I think what Stefan has come to in his research and work is that a good vagal nerve tone is the absolute number one thing that aspect of recovery and mental well-being. So however we approach that, I think it's central to the mental health industry.
Thanks, Anna. And Wendy, you've dodged a bullet a bit, haven't you, with having an agnostic kind of offering? You don't have to build your own hardware, and everyone else is going to be a bit envious of that position. Does this free you up to kind of focus in on that data and be able to, really kind of find quite diverse ways of using that? How do you use data within Helium?
Yeah, that's a great point. And really it's because we want to work with all of these fabulous devices and meet users where they are. So we're leveraging wearables people are already using, or devices that are already being used in the organizations that we're working with. So being hardware agnostic has been fabulous for us on that. When we work with data, we're really just focused on, when we do receive all of that information, how we personify that data that is coming from the wearables. And it's important our users actually understand that sheer amount of important information, but then also aren't overloaded by it. So when we personify the data, we could give you stress as a flat number, or we could show you that as a jaguar that starts out kind of agitated, and then as you calm your stress response, the jaguar calms and softens and starts to lick its paw. So we find that we know the brain believes what it sees. So with Helium, we're creating those memories that help the user associate both that calming action with this visual, with this sense of control, and with that sense of, I can return back to here in that stored memory that I've now created. So we focus a lot on existing neurofeedback research, existing data that's out there in the world, and then try to give that data summarized in a way that gives the user some real insight into how that's reacting and how they can improve through regular training, regular usage. And there's a big difference between flat media, audio only, and this immersive media. That's well documented. And so being spatial makes it more memorable, makes it more engaging for the user.
Fantastic. It's yeah, I love the idea of just that kind of extra set of dimensions within VR, and I think you know, kind of it's what's sort of clear from what people are saying is the idea of mental health is really complex, obviously really non-linear, and quite hard to pin down in lots of cases, although there are some kind of clear causal and effects in terms of, you know, heart rate variability is something that's flagged a lot. Kind of how do we quantify that? What's the way that we pin down this idea of mental health and mental health improvement? And, you know, how do we just, you know, in terms of sports and those kind of things, people want to know that they're getting better. You know, are we getting better? Is our mental health getting better? Or are we just sort of drifting around in a sea of kind of ups and downs? How do we quantify it? Deborah, let's start with you.
Yes. Well, that's been our focus for the last 25 years, is how do you quantify it and feed it back so that people can see and feel that what they're seeing and feeling are resonant. So again, heart rate variability, there's both the amount of heart rate variability that you need a lot of for health and wellness, and if it's too low for your age, that's a predictor of all-cause mortality. So you want to increase that, and most HRV devices and technology now are related to recovery and fitness and increasing the amount, which is how much variability there is, how flexible you are physically and also emotionally. HeartMath is focused more on the pattern of heart rate variability and over time, because heart rate changes with every single beat. And if you can plot that, what we see is it directly reflects emotional state. So when people can get more synchronization or coherence in their HRV pattern, their heart rhythm pattern, actually within a short period of time, 6 to 9 weeks, we've done thousands and thousands of assessments, they begin to have a baseline shift. So in terms of your question, how do you know you're improving? Well, it's got to be subjective. You got to feel better. But you also objectively want to see a baseline shift in some metric. And so we call this heart rhythm coherence because it's a sine wave, a coherent waveform. And the way it entrains the brain waves into synchronization or coherence and the nervous system, and like we talk about the vagal tone, Anna was mentioning, all of that improves. And when you get your coherence baseline increased, and that can happen using technology feedback like our inner balance, like Anna showed you, our technology or our M-Wave, and you see the metrics and you see that your scores are going up in terms of your coherence. And it's reflected in your resting state, HRV assessment baseline. Then you know, because it's actually confirming what you feel inside. Obviously, if you have a baseline shift, the technology says, oh, you're better, and you don't feel it. That's a disconnect. It's immaterial. How you experience is number one. And if you can get technology refined, so it's reflecting, which we're all trying to do, the user's experience, and there's that positive feedback loop, and then you can measure some metric, and again, you can use brainwaves, but we don't feel brainwaves. We sure feel heart rhythms. And you can feel that shift and emotional aha as you get more coherent. That's incredibly motivating, but it's also reflecting the communication in your heart-brain nervous system that is now synchronizing and improving and coming into your resonant state, which allows more, whatever you want to call your spirit, your true self, your sense of security to come through. And that's really what people are yearning for. Mental health is nonlinear, but the linear is the baseline shift. And if we can all help people see and have content, it's not just the tracking, it's the training and the therapy and the content that facilitates self-empowerment, self-regulation, so that you can go, wow, I did that. I achieved this baseline shift. And we can build in all sorts of rewards through AR, VR, gamification. The world of creativity that can happen with technology is enormous once we know what we're trying to achieve. And to me, the achievement truly is facilitating people to create that self-empowerment and baseline shift, whether you're measuring coherence or brain waves. Coherence in the heart rhythm is actually the easiest metric people can feel appreciation and immediately see their coherent rhythm. That's like, wow. So having these aha insights and making it simple enough that anyone can do it and making it fun is really what our next level is, and providing content to all you guys. We've been 20, 30 years creating really refined content for people to achieve this. And we're not interested in necessarily being the only hardware or by any means the only anything, but being able to provide this content of baseline shift, heart coherence is what we feel is going to help humanity. And that's the metric. If you can have a baseline shift, your mental health, your emotional health, your physical health, it's all improved.
Fantastic. And does anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, I think, I just wanted to add to that, and I agree to all of it. And I also, like, something that I think is an important metric is the practice. And, if you look at the vast majority of people in the rat race, if you might see that linear baseline shift if you are doing a daily practice, but it's extremely few that are doing a daily practice. And I've been working with habit creation in technology space for many years, and it's always going to be more or less a single-digit percentage that will create a daily practice of anything new. Meditation, what have you. And we know that those things work, but it's hard to get the vast majority of people to do a daily practice. So you will have times where your metrics and your practice are better. But I think what's important with the quantification is that it doesn't demotivate you that maybe there's a decrease because you've fallen off the practice or the bandwagon, so to say. And that even when you might have just had a baby and it isn't about the performance, but if you do it once a week, every time you do it, that is a metric of progress. So I think we want to also really encourage just measuring and quantifying the self-care action of actually doing something versus necessarily the focusing only, at least not only, on the measurable sort of metrics, such as, heart rate variability is a great metric, but that in combination with actually just doing the practice.
That's really interesting. And Noga, do you have did you find it easy to get people to use your product and to engage with it long term? And how do you kind of make that happen? How do you reduce those frictions?
Definitely. So I definitely agree with Anna that we are treading dangerously here when we try to tell people how they feel. And we want to be very encouraging of their emotions, all of them. And we want to be very wary of telling people right now you're not feeling well or you're feeling bad or abnormal. So I found that people most engaged with the product when they didn't try as hard to succeed in it, when it wasn't like an assignment that they had, a task that they had to complete. Just showing up, just practicing really gave them this sense of accomplishment, this sense of awareness. And we were talking about hardware versus software. So one of the things that are really good about Reflect being a hardware device is that its physical presence in your space reminds people to think of themselves. Even if they're not holding the device right now or using it right now, they would sit in the corner of their living room and they would take a moment to check back with themselves, to check back with how they're feeling. And this is already great. I've already done my job, I think, in making people think of well-being. So definitely just giving people a very encouraging experience through the device, through the accompanying app, and just telling them that we want to help them become more aware and more in connectedness with their body is already helpful in establishing a habit. And we want to make Reflect really pleasant and really nice to touch, and also very beautiful, so you can have it, you want to present it in your space. And those things we found really supported the habit formation. And we did some long-term studies and we found that people kept using it in very encouraging numbers. And we think that we give this really nice experience that you want to come back to when you need it. So you don't have to necessarily do a daily practice or try to reach a goal, but you can carve out some time for yourself at the end of the day or once in a while when you feel the need, and that Reflect is there for you is already really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. There's a product called Whoop, and for the audience out there who don't know what that is, it's basically a heart measuring band that you can wear on a wrist or at the top of your arm. But the model around that product is really fascinating, because they basically say to you, just wear this all the time. Hard luck. Pay us loads of money to wear this all the time. That's, as far as I see it, their model. And it seems to work very well for people who adhere to it and really want to get those results from it. And it's more tailored towards sports and recovery and performance and these kind of things. But there's an interesting model there, isn't there, of a way of monetizing these kind of technologies, which are kind of float within the grey area of cause and effect, and sometimes can be hard to sell because they're not instant. I mean, they're considerably positive in terms of what they can do in many cases, but it's not obvious when you buy it and put it on that it's done that. So I don't know, maybe Wendy, you could sort of jump in on the monetization, the business models around these mental health and physical technology product propositions. What's your experience with selling this new sort of paradigm of product?
Yeah, and it certainly is interesting because there's many like that are gathering data all the time. And really our focus at Helium is always just not just that data collection, not just that data tracking, but again, interacting with it, bringing it to life beyond the monthly subscription model, beyond potentially monetizing that data. What else can we do with that to bring that into a more personalized experience for the user? There's certainly an approach in the future to be able to serve up and use this as a recommendation engine. So we're all tracking this data on a regular basis. Maybe something is recommended to you according to your stress response, how you are at this point. We're already really there, but how can we do that in a mindful way that it's marrying the mindfulness of being aware that technology is a part of our everyday life and using that. I loved all the women who spoke before talking about the reminders in an everyday experience that we need to, maybe we don't put on the technology every single time we need to experience this. Maybe we just see that as a reminder and we have the recall ability to come back to that. We do a lot of, even without a wearable, it's just our users wanting to escape into a mindfulness experience without the wearable data for a break from all of that coming at you, all of that information being collected. So there's certainly a model to do so in the future, and there's also a model to serve this up as a recommendation engine, even if I'm not coming to the application itself. But we do have to remember to do that mindfully, and we're not just adding to the noise.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We do a ton of work in the sort of world of service design and user experience design, and those things are so delicate these days. People are so sensitive to good design and good interfaces and reduced friction across everything from Apple devices, through to just wanting everything immediately and on a stick, as it were. So have any of you got sort of experiences of epiphanies when it comes to those sort of things? How do you kind of reduce those frictions? How do you get these technologies to be simple to use and to work for people in their world?
Yeah, well, I've worked, I guess, in that field for a big portion of my career. And I think there's, when I started, I actually, was looking into usability design and all of that in the late 90s. So a whole industry has evolved around it. So what I think we should reflect of is sort of the evolution of and the KPIs that have driven the tech industry and kind of flag a little bit what they've done to the tech industry. So if we look at, for example, at what we've optimized social media for, we've optimized social media with machine learning for keeping people on the platform as long as possible and maximize ad revenue. And so what that has done is that has prioritized conspiracy over truth, because that actually does optimize for keeping people on the platform. So we have to be really conscious with these kind of things. And, I've been through the school of how to make apps and experiences addictive, which is obviously big in the gaming industry and so on. So, me being native tech industry person, I think we need to scrutinize our processes, our KPIs and values. I think that culture and process becomes really, really important, so that I think there are some of these techniques that we can use because it's good if you sort of get addicted to meditating, for example. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but we need to really look at what we're optimizing for. And then just in terms of business model, I think that I come from much more of a software service SaaS app space, and that's kind of what I've done mostly, but have then also worked with hardware. And I think there's something really healthy about the combination of hardware and software business models that is not as appreciated necessarily by investors as I think it should be. I mean, I look at the industries, both of fitness apps and well-being apps without hardware, and 90+% never become profitable and never have a lifetime value over cost per acquisition that is over one. So I think the business model for all of our companies are actually really relevant and really healthy, and how we develop hardware is just your expertise, Jacob, has also completely transformed over the last 2-3 decades.
Yeah, and I think even in the last 2 or 3 years, in fact, hardware has transformed a lot in the world of wearables because of the things that are available now, and it's a much easier place to make technology for wearable applications than it was when we started 5 or 6 years ago. I'm gonna segue from that into the idea of community and how these products and services relate not just to the user, but to those other users around them locally, far away. I'm going to ask Deborah maybe to talk about the HeartMath Institute, which I wasn't aware of, I have to say, and I've had a look at some of that stuff. So I'd love you to kind of start with that, but I'm sure you've all got stories around how you engage with community broader than the individual. Deborah.
Yes, it's very exciting. It's where we're focusing a lot now. If you look at personal coherence, which is the alignment of heart, brain, nervous system, synchronization to optimize our higher potentials, self-regulation, all that basic skill set, we have a lot of content that goes with our hardware. To Anna's point, I mean, where we're all headed, I believe, for effectiveness, whether it's a subscription service, or whatever business model, hardware combined with content and a pathway and software and community. There's a third element there, because people need accountability. They need support to be able to continuously improve habits, change. It's not done in isolation, as Noga was saying. It's people feel bad if they fall off the wagon of any sort of self-practice. And if in community you support each other. The beautiful thing about communities per market, per what people identify with, like we're in multiple markets as HeartMath, from first responders to nurses to teachers to children to business leaders, and they all want to talk to each other and know what the best practice for them and their little their identity, their group is. And being able to facilitate those kinds of sub-communities where it's meaningful for people. The other thing that's exciting is that we've been able to measure at HeartMath Institute social coherence. So as you are in heart rhythm coherence, your heart is creating an electromagnetic field with every beat, 2.5 watts of power. And it's broadcasting it like radio waves. That's how we pick up on each other's vibes, so to speak. So when we're stressed or frustrated, we feel it from each other. And it can certainly be measured in the heart rhythm pattern in the brain waves of people standing next to each other. And it's like, wow, we're affecting each other that much. And when we're in heart rhythm coherence, we're helping to uplift each other, not only emotionally, but also creatively, cognitively. So there's huge implications for how we facilitate community building. Are we going to facilitate all the negativity and the hatred that has been built on social media? Or are we going to facilitate coherence and co-creativity in a positive way? And technology, hardware, software, and content all have a part to play in that. It's our intelligence that can create and weave those input systems together to facilitate personal and social growth and consciousness. So our focus is, how do we do this most efficiently? Social coherence games. You know, being able to license our algorithm to game companies to make it fun and addictive to come back and play a game that's going to facilitate your positive hormones, immune system. It's going to facilitate community with others to co-create something, and you're going to get rewards based upon being more coherent, because we know socially that coherence is contagious. When one person is coherent, actually in research, other people who don't even know what they're being measured become more coherent. Now that's incredible for society. If we can get a more coherent society by having our hearts resonate more, and that opens up new aspects of our brain potential, our human capacities, I wake up every day passionate about that. Then we talk about global coherence at the Research Institute. We have a whole global coherence app where with sensors throughout the world that's actually measuring human interaction with the Earth's fields and the rhythms of the Earth, and how do we have our inner environment couple with the external environment to really accelerate this consciousness shift that's happening. So I think we all have a huge playground, and it's all about co-creation. We each have our own businesses, but if we can do something together with our creative backgrounds and years of seasoning and intelligence, we can do so much more for this planet and for our own fulfillment. And that's exciting to me. That's what social coherence is about.
Fascinating. I was just taken by what you said at the beginning about the heart having 2.5 watts of power. Well, I can attest to that, because I've in a lab condition, I've measured the heart at about 2 meters away with a sensor. So I've seen those signals, and just kind of, I can just see how that network, and it wasn't something I was thinking about at the time, but yeah, amazing, really fascinating.
If you think about that signal, the heart's field, electromagnetic field, broadcasting like a radio or a cell phone, the content of your emotional state, which it is through the pattern of your heart rate variability, is broadcast through that field, affecting every cell of your body, because that pulse goes to every cell. Just like Chinese doc medicine will read the pulse and know what's wrong. If you are putting out love, care, compassion, kindness, appreciation, the qualities of the heart or spirit that create heart rhythm coherence, that's being broadcast through your field to others, to your family, to your baby, to the energetic field of the planet. That's just not some woo-woo concept. That's actually measurable. And as we see we can do this, and science validates it, and which it has in peer-reviewed studies, the hope for humanity, the hope for us to know that our heart really counts is incredible. So people are waking up to the heart.
We must have evolved over many, many years to have such sensitivity to that. It's fascinating. Does anyone else have any kind of stories of community and how you're linking what you do with a bigger picture, I suppose?
Well,
yeah, definitely.
Sorry. Wendy. We're just at the start of our journey with consumers, but community is definitely going to be a big part of that. And I can say that when I envisioned Reflect, I thought of it as an experience that you do by yourself. That is, it is something that you do alone to connect with yourself. And this is not what I saw in the field when I presented it to others. I saw something that actually people communicated over, and it created very interesting interactions between people. So we are definitely going to think about how we implement community and Reflect as a more social experience with other people, whether it's like with friends or with a wider community, because that's definitely a power that can keep you on track, like Deborah mentioned, and is very, very inherent to the importance of creating a feeling of well-being, that feeling that you're not alone.
Fantastic. Wendy?
Yeah, and just to build on that, I mean, we love the power of community, and we're always working on creative ways to bring our community together, doing group sessions, because as you mentioned, I mean, we did start as this is something that's private and individualized to you, but you can also, you know, share augmented reality through a Zoom call. And we've really, in this year in particular, gotten even more creative about how we reach people, because social isolation and confined stress is at an all-time high on a global scale. And so how do we bring people together globally on a shared purpose, a shared mentality, and help them learn to build their mental resiliency together, have these positive, beautiful experiences together in a way that we've never done before. So the power of community is so critical. And as these ladies have said, I mean, you can feel that resonate when you do perform this as a group, or when you do share this experience even across oceans. So
yeah, that's really, yeah, I think it's, I mean, the community side of things is such an important thing at this time in the world where people are so physically disconnected. So it's great to see, yeah, people trying to build those experiences and connect people together. In terms of kind of where we're going with mental health products, mainly based on the new technologies that are able to measure and create that data, what excites you at this stage? Are the things that you see on the horizon in your work, or around the community that you have that you think are going to be quite important coming up in the next few years? We see lots of stuff going on from a technology point of view, but I'm sort of like thinking, how are these things going to play out? Where are we going with mental health products and services?
So I think we're at a great time because obviously, well, not so great, but stress is an all-time high. But more positively, mental health is now a topic that's on the table. So it's less stigmatized and it's less taboo to talk about it, whether it's because younger generations are more open, or whether because social networks give us that spaces that we can share. So we're just at a time where people are really aware of the stress, and obviously they are also aware that it harms their health and they want to improve it. So this is a really exciting time to be in wellness tech and in mental health tech, because people are really looking for these solutions. And especially with COVID and with what's going on right now in the upheaval over everyday life, people are really searching for these solutions and searching to get tools, to start new habits, to pick up new tools that can help them gain control and also put their well-being at the forefront.
Yeah,
are you breaking up a bit?
That
could you start again, Anna?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so just wanted to build on what Noga said, which is I'm very excited about the maturing of the industry, and also that it becomes more than one industry. So we have a health industry that includes everything, or a wellness industry, or a fitness industry. There obviously huge amount of sub subsectors, and I'm excited about that to see companies becoming very expert on whether that's addiction or postnatal or crime-related or nutrition. So horses for courses, and I think that there's a huge amount of opportunity, and that's very exciting. I think it's exciting to see an increase in funding going into to mental health tech. I think that's really nice to see, and there definitely is an increase. And then also, I mean, personally, obviously with the Sensate, I'm personally very excited about the horizon of the vibrational nature of us, of our organs, because the universe is made of vibrations. So both from a physics perspective to a biological perspective, to really explore the vibrational nature. I think that's something that excites me enormously. And then also the sort of merging of industries. So industries that previously have been separate. So neuroscience with biotech, with psychology, with AI. And so all of those coming together, I think is unique. And it's a unique point in time and an inflection point. So together with funding and all of that. So I think it's an amazing time for the industry.
I couldn't agree more. Just to build on that, I mean, we are so excited about the concept and the awareness that mental health hygiene is just as important as physical health hygiene, and that conversation is being had and is at an all-time high on the effect that your mental health has on your physical health. And we are just really excited about a day when we can have these drugless interventions, digiceuticals available on a mass scale and awareness. So you could, walk into your local pharmacy and next to these physical health hygiene products, or next to these, antacids or stress, take something for your headache. You can also take something for that stress response that's a technical intervention. It's a digiceutical. So we are so excited about the awareness level of that, and just that tie between mind, body, where the conversation is being had.
What I'm most excited about is people waking up to the energetic heart. Really, the heart is, from my experience and perception, is the next level of human evolution. And it's just, the mind has taken us to where we see in society, but without the heart, we're not going to go the next level. And that it's being uncovered. People are intuitively feeling the nudge to connect more with the heart. You hear it in every country that we're in. It's not cultural, it's not religious. There's something in the air. And I'm really excited about how that's going to bring, we call it heart intelligence, more intuitive intelligence that's going to prompt what we all do. When you see it reflected in now, insurance companies are going, wow, we need to cover mental health. Mm-hmm. We need to cover biofeedback. The VA administration has just adopted HeartMath for biofeedback, and that's fantastic, and they've got funding for it. And because they're recognizing that heart regulation, what we've been talking about, self-regulation is increasingly important for resilience, for vagal tone, for health, for recovery from trauma, addiction. It goes on, because it's getting to the source of human healing. What is the source? And this is what we're all talking about. We're all trying to hone in on how to help people increase their capacity and their potential, or heal. And the heart plays such an important role in that, and the intelligence of heart and consciousness. And that's what I'm most excited about, is listening to and following the heart, and more people doing that is going to connect us with something bigger in the higher dimensional field.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's a brilliant place to conclude. We're back at the start talking about the heart. So I'm going to say thank you to everyone for your contributions today. Really great to be talking to such inspirational women leading companies in all sorts of dimensions, but all around the mental health discussion. And it's been a really great discussion. Thank you all for joining us today. If you would like to get in touch with any of the panelists today, you can go to thrivewearables.com/giant 2020, or you can look at the Giant Health website to connect. We are going to now move on to questions, and so there'll be about 15 minutes for questions from the panel. So thank you all for listening, and we're looking forward to those questions now.
Thanks again to the panel for that really fantastic talk. Really exciting to have you all back today to answer live questions. And we haven't got anything in the box at the moment. So anyone who's out there listening and would like to pose a question, there's still a lineup of speakers this evening in the UK and this morning over in the States for some of you. Please do stick those questions in the box. I have a couple of questions to get us started though, whilst we're waiting. Over and beyond all the really great topics we covered. One theme that came up as we went through that discussion was the idea of stress as a kind of emergency. We're in a state of emergency with our mental health. Sorry, just switching off something else there. And I kind of compared that a little bit in my head to climate change and the fact that that's an emergency. And these two things really suffer from a similar problem, one of sort of present bias, where people are kind of not looking at the long term, they're quite fixated on the short term. And so I suppose combining that idea of present bias and the sort of reluctance to worry about the longer term, how do we manage that change that we have to make if we're suffering from mental illness, and how do we manage the changes and the craziness that's all around us right now? It's a really, really transitional time in the world across so many dimensions, and mental health could be well placed right at the middle of that. What are your thoughts on that sort of big topic area? Whoever wants to start on that, please jump in.
Well, I'd like to make a distinction between what we have control over at this moment and what we don't. Because mental health and stress, we do have more control over that than we have perhaps been taught or think. Climate change, we can do our little part, but that's the external thing. Stress is really, we have to look at what it is. It's our perception and our response to our perceptions. And if our response to our perceptions is fear or anger or anxiety, it's going to throw our whole system out of balance, and it's going to then lead to mental, emotional, physical health problems. And when we understand our inner psychology, our inner operating system, we can take more charge of it. And I think that's really what mental health and technology, the opportunity is there, is to help people with biofeedback and other means to be able to take more charge of how they feel. We're not just a victim of random perceptions. And I think that's really where we can make a difference. And that in itself can begin to help people feel less victimized and more empowered to see new solutions to external issues like climate change. So I think it still comes back to the individual taking energetic responsibility for themselves and learning how to do that.
Yeah, picking up on what I'm saying. Oh, sorry, there's a bit of feedback. Dara, can you please mute your screen, I think? Oh, Jacob. So it's definitely about our perception. And I think regarding stress and not so much about climate change, which is an objective state, our perception towards our stress is what causes us the most harm. And there's been research on that, but the stress response itself is not as harmful. Like the body being in the state of alert, being ready to pounce and energize itself is not necessarily bad for you, but how you perceive it and how worried you are about it, how you're not channeling it into being productive or being more focused on what you're doing, this is what causes you the most harm and can also lead to health issues. So I think an educational point can be made about us dealing with stress and looking at stress as something that can even assist us in our lives, or just knowing that we can use it and channel it for good, or we can be more in charge of it and the owners of our stress responses.
I would completely agree. And some great points were made earlier in the session about how this is a process, learning to control your stress response, learning to control anxiety, It's a process, so it's going to ebb and flow. And really, we're in the middle of what we call the stress Olympics, and not everybody has trained for that. And so what we can do as companies is provide tools that let you build that mental resilience, let you build that awareness, and have tools to train over time to be able to respond to this stressful situation and whatever comes in the future. So that level of awareness, that level of control, or being able to provide a sense of control and awareness over what is truly just, the word unprecedented has been a little overused this year, but unprecedented stressful times that aren't going anywhere. So I do think that each one of the companies here provides an amazing tool for insight and for that mental resiliency and training that users can take and move on through this time of just uncertainty.
Yeah, I don't have agree with all of that. It's not an enormous amount to add. Like with Centric, we're really focusing on that first step, and it's important that we have companies at all levels. So we are focusing on the people that are really struggling to take the first self-caring step, find it difficult to establish a meditation practice, etc. And where we are today, that is actually the majority. So there's a huge part of the population, and just iterating the points that it's a crisis, and it was a crisis before the pandemic. So we had already skyrocketing numbers of anxiety and stress, and then the pandemic hit. So it is definitely a mental health crisis that we're looking at, and also what's worrying is the younger generation's level of anxiety. So it's 70% around Gen Z versus around 40 for baby boomers. So we really need to address that. But before we are at the stage where people are able to take responsibility for how they are contributing to society, there is just the basics of self-care and being able to get out of a fight, flight, freeze stress response, which we've all been talking about.
Deborah, I think you're maybe you need to mute if you wouldn't mind, just because we have some feedback issues. Thank you so much. So next question is inspired by discussing a moment ago with the panel some ideas around their businesses, I suppose, and we talked about responsible industry. I thought it was a great term, and it really resonates with us here at Thrive, who are restructuring our business around impact and looking to have that built into what we do. Anna, tell me about responsible industry from the perspective of how you see that and what it means and what you're going to do with that.
Yeah, I think I spoke a little bit about it just now on the panel, sort of especially with the technology industry. And I guess my point is that good intention is not enough. I think a lot of people have gone into being helpful in NGOs and technology for a lot of different things with good intentions. But ultimately, if you don't really know your field enough or the impact that it's going to have, you need to at least have very thorough processes together, and also culture that keeps asking questions, that is able to challenge the leadership and so on. So we, together with Stefan, but I am certainly very, very conscious about the culture we bring, and how we keep questioning what value and how we are delivering value. So that is not just directly the technology that we're bringing to the market in form of the Sensate, but also the wider how we're doing it. It's not just what we're doing, but how we're doing it. And I think that when more than in almost any other area, when you're dealing with mentally unwell and vulnerable people, it's extremely important that the culture and the processes really drive scrutiny and continuously questioning what impact you're having.
I can add to that and say that we are dealing with very sensitive issues and sensitive data. So first of all, we need to be responsible about how we store that data and the privacy of our users. And another thing that we need to be responsible for is we are not we shouldn't strive to create dependency or addiction to the solutions that we bring. So obviously we want to bring calm, we want to bring some comfort to our users, but it's very important to me, and I'm sure to everyone here, that people choose to use our products when they feel the need, and that it brings them that sense of comfort, and then it brings them that solution. But I, for one, am looking at Reflect as sort of training wheels. So biofeedback in general, we want to give the user the agency to control their body, to control their emotions, and maybe later on they might not need the product. So I would wish to create that experience where the users reflect when they need to, when they want to, and at their own pace, and not because I'm trying to drive engagement because I want to sell more products or I want to show good numbers. So I think that's a very important thing to do. We want to give people the tools that they can feel that they are in control of themselves, of their stress, and of their relationship with the technology.
Yeah, I would echo that. We take a lot of conscious, not only privacy by design, but the notifications, reducing the amount of push notifications, reducing the amount of noise that's added to just all of the other media that's coming at our users. So we encourage our users to turn off media when they can, to really focus on that digital diet and how that digital diet can make you sick with overexposure, or you can add things to it that are positive and uplifting and are going to add fiber, as you will, to your digital diet. And so that's certainly a message that we make a point of with our community, as well as in the way we build our applications, as I know all of our companies are very consciously aware of just adding to that noise of all of the media.
It's a challenging space, isn't it, being in a tech company with the need to fund that tech invention and development, and to keep the investors happy and to do all that stuff, and then at the same time to have a built-in mission to do some kind of good in the world. That's a real difficult one. However you look at it, there's conflicts there to some degree. I know, Anna, just because of the fact I know what you're up to a bit more than everyone else. But in terms of your investor discussions and the people you talk to, do you kind of bring this into those discussions, and do you end up filtering them, and do they pitch to you?
Yeah, I mean, fundraising is always a matchmake, and I think it's extremely important, if you are mission driven, that your investors buy into that mission. Personally, I think that great financial success is a path and a route to having impact. So I don't think they need to contradict each other. And unfortunately, the mental health industry is abundant, unfortunately, and I hope we will all in a number of years not be needed anymore. So yeah, I think so. But at the same time, and I think that's another thing that has been accelerated with the recent events, and that is that investors actually, just like many other people, are asking themselves, how am I adding value? What is the purpose? And are looking, there's more money going into mental health, both because it's a realization of the magnitude of the industry, but also because genuinely in the investor field as well, in the investor space, there's a lot of more growing interest in impact.
Deborah, have you been taking investment for the last 20 years and seen any ebb and flow change of attitude? How's it looked in that period of time raising money?
I would agree it's changed dramatically. We made a decision early on, because we're a mission-driven company, about helping to activate the heart and humanity, and we have our own integrity that we follow. And I think that's important, is that we weren't going to take any money, even though we had many offers from venture capitalists who saw the potential of our technology research, what we were doing. We have angel investors who've been in it for the long haul, because we started back in 1990s and very mission focused. But it has changed, because just as we were just saying, it's the VCs, the investors, the hedge fund managers are stressed out themselves. and they themselves are looking for solutions, and they want to invest in what's going to help them and their families as well, knowing the market is huge for stress and mental health. So the attitudes towards money are changing, the attitudes towards social responsibility and social impact as a metric of return on investment, all that's in process of change. We still prefer at this point in time to bootstrap or be self-funding rather than go out for money where we would have any sort of self-compromise of what we feel is needed. But that doesn't say we wouldn't take investment if it was the right mission alignment and the right ability to control our own destiny and make those choices. So I think that's something every company has to evaluate. And I know too many startups who have compromised their integrity.
Yeah, it's a real tough one. The matchmaking idea, the kind of bringing together of the right teams, right, so important. And like you say, lots of people fall by the wayside, especially if they're desperate for money and they go out to investment, with that kind of over them. I'm gonna turn to you, Wendy, on a question that you just sort of talked to me about it before. I thought it was really fascinating, and it got me thinking. Many years ago, let's say 100 years ago, people maybe weren't that stressed compared with what they're like now. And in that time, we've had pharmaceutical drugs and treatments, and we've gone through an industry of chemical treatment for many things. You sort of flagged that maybe technology can start to move us away from that world. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, well, we just get really excited about the concept of having non-drug alternatives to what would have traditionally been treated with pharmaceuticals. Helium is not a replacement for psychotropic medications or diagnostic, but what we do try to provide our users is an option to try these methodologies that are digital interventions that help build this mental resilience apart from those traditional treatments. And so as we continue to build that out, we'd love to, in the pharmacies people walk into, that there's a digiceuticals aisle, that you could scan a QR code and download one of these applications or buy some of these wearables that give you insight into what is your body doing, how are you reacting, and how can you learn to control that in a way that doesn't necessarily have lots of side effects or other concerns. And so the digiceuticals aisle is something we dream big about, where you have a mental health hygiene cabinet alongside your actual pharmaceuticals as well. So, and I think that we're all working to achieve these options for people to provide just a bigger, broader spectrum on what we would normally address mental health or other physical treatments.
I guess to a great extent, everyone here is working on that. Stress reduction through non-medicated forms. That's kind of what you're all doing. So it's kind of the evidence is there, isn't it? It's clearly a way forward, at least in some aspects of people's lives. And Anna, you've got plenty of experience with a physical device and stress. And have you got anything to add to that kind of pharmaceutical discussion?
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. I think we don't need to villainize the entire pharma industry, but back to my point again on the panel about KPIs that drive industries. So it's challenging. It is something that it's a really big conversation that I'm very fascinated about, which is also kind of the future of our economy, of regulation. And I mean, there's so many things that have changed enormously since we set up our current regulatory systems and our institutions and so on. And that includes acceleration of accumulation of money through technology, and just that the public market works very, very different today, etc. So for pharma, I think for a lot of people, there is a conflict whereby driving revenues for a company isn't always coherent with driving health for the individual. And so that is, I think that's why I'm welcoming conversation and debate about how we create a responsible industry and combine those things. And I think leadership in that space is really, really important. But there is also a combination. I mean, there is obviously times where pharmaceuticals are needed, but hopefully with our type of products, we can reduce that to a very, very small percentage. There's such a lot of disease that is a consequence or that is accelerated by inflammation and lowered immune system as a consequence of stress. So I have no doubt that our industry can completely transform how we shift also towards preventative health.
It's interesting you link into preventative, and that's kind of part of what we're doing with lots of the projects we work on is around that whole theme. Actually, my gran falling over and breaking her hip and ending up in hospital and going through a whole series of completely preventable trauma, including pharmaceuticals across multiple dimensions. There's so much that we can do with technology. It's just really frustrating that it takes so long to kind of, change habits, not just of people, but people administering people. So doctors and physicians who are in that space, who are maybe don't have access to some quite basic technologies. So there's a long way to go. I think I'm pretty sure we should have wrapped up 15 minutes ago, but I'm not really sure. Nobody's given me a cue. So I expect there's still an audience out there, but we really should wind up now as we're getting on for 6 o'clock in the UK. I'm going to say thank you again to everyone on the panel. It's been absolutely fantastic to speak to you again. And really look forward to carrying on the discussions. If you want to reach any of the panelists today, look at the Giant website or go to thrivewearables.com/giant2020. And you'll be able to get their details or my details or the team here. So thank you again to everyone and have a great evening or day, depending on where you are.